In an underground wastewater plant filled with residues of crystal moss, a group of workers is diligently scouring the black liquid for something. Even after looking for it for a long time, they are unable to find it when one of them remarks that the day was a waste again. Just then, he looks up and finds a big, shiny stone stuck in the wires, becoming surprised. Thinking that something like this would easily fill up his daily quota, he starts to walk towards it. However, as he nears the stone and attempts to grab it, an electric shock courses through the wires hanging nearby, causing him to crash into the liquid with a huge splash. Observing this, one of his colleagues rushes towards him, addressing him as Hyunmoo and inquiring about his well-being. Getting up, Hyunmoo states that he is fine, while his colleague Yoo-min, a research assistant, remarks that he is pushing himself too hard. Agreeing, another one of his colleagues asks why he is trying to get up there. They remind him of the water's contamination by manna from crystal moss, emphasizing that even a single mistake like that can lead to their deaths. In response, Hyunmoo acknowledges their concern, agrees to exercise caution, and starts to laugh, masking his inner annoyance. After getting out of the underground area, he starts to vent his frustration, looking at the $30 he received as a salary and wondering what to do with such a small amount of money. He thinks of the world as a very unfair place. He remembers that 30 years ago, when dungeons started to appear in the world, every citizen awakened their new superpowers, but he got nothing. He was told that a zero-star, powerless layperson has no chance of developing any abilities and wasn't even given a single chance to prove himself. While he is thinking about that, a person calls out to him and introduces himself as Robert Lee, a lawyer, stating that he has come to deliver what his father left for him, making him confused. After thinking a little, he turns to the lawyer, stating that he does not have any parents, and looks at the necklace in his hand, asking if this is really from his father, which the lawyer confirms. Returning to the industrial district, he shows the necklace to Yoo-min, remarking that it does not look very expensive, but Yoo-min feels surprised, revealing that it is a return stone. She explains that it is an item that the hunters use to escape the dungeons. She reveals that it cannot be used outside a dungeon, causing him to wonder why something like that would be left for him. Staring at the necklace, Yoo-min remarks that someone like him can never enter a dungeon, but later feels embarrassed for saying that and apologizes, explaining that this was not her intention. Stating that he is aware of what she intended, Hyunmoo tells her not to apologize for that. Quickly changing the topic, Yoo-min asks if he has heard about Lee Jae-tae, a person who has been trending lately, but he does not seem to care about it and gets on the bus to go home. Back at home, he watches the news about Lee Jae-tae's Taesung clan succeeding in raiding the 5-star dungeon, making it the third successful attempt to clear such a dungeon worldwide. In an interview, Lee Jae-tae expresses his happiness at being able to show Korea's true power to the world through this raid. Looking at him, Hyunmoo thinks that he is incredibly rich, strong, popular, and good-looking, remarking that he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. In contrast to that, he looks at a necklace given to him by the lawyer, thinking that the only thing he has is this worthless stone. He thinks that if he ever had a chance, he would definitely have made good use of it, and he clenches the stone in his fist. As a result of his grasping the stone tightly, a bright light suddenly begins to emanate from his fist, leaving him shocked. As he stares at his fist in confusion, the light begins to grow brighter and brighter, ultimately transporting him to a very different place. Looking at the haunting atmosphere and the dark sky with the red moon, Hyunmoo wonders where he is when a window suddenly appears in front of him, telling him to break through his limits. The window reveals that his body has been awakened to mana, which is now circulating inside him, surprising him. While he is still trying to make sense of the situation, countless windows start to appear in front of him, revealing that he has accomplished the impossible and has entered hell. The system informs him that he is the final survivor, making him shocked, and he starts to call out, asking if there is anyone else in the place. While calling out for assistance in confusion, he suddenly turns around and finds huge stones shining brightly behind him, recognizing them as crystal moss. Remembering that the small piece of crystal moss stuck in the wires was worth a few $100s, Hyunmoo wonders how much these big stones would be worth. Estimating their price to be tens of thousands of dollars, Hyunmoo feels overjoyed, thinking that he has scored a jackpot. However, just then he feels his body slowly becoming stiff and starts to throw up blood, getting a notification that he has been paralyzed due to the poison. Lying on the ground, he feels difficulty breathing, and his stamina slowly starts getting consumed. The system informs him that he has become vulnerable to the attack of the enemies, making him confused about which enemies they are referring to. After a few moments, he gets the notification that he has died because of fine dust with a very short survival duration, making him shocked about the existence of such an unexpected enemy. After a while, Hyunmoo wakes up again, feeling alright, and wonders if it was a dream. As he gets up, the window appears in front of him once again, informing him of his first quest, to survive till sunrise in hell. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake violently, causing him to get up and start running while feeling angry at whoever made him go through this torture. However, as expected, he is not able to survive for more than 5 minutes and dies again. After experiencing death 8 times like that, Hyunmoo becomes overly frustrated and starts to pray to the divine being to help him get out of this hell. However, this strategy of his is of no use, and he dies once again. After his 11th death experience, he changes his strategy from avoiding the fine dust to inhaling it, resulting in increased poison and paralysis resistance. However, this strategy can only save him from death for 24 minutes, and he ultimately meets his usual tragic end. After dying 14 times, Hyunmoo sits in a meditative position, thinking that he survived the longest when he was only breathing. Recalling the breathing techniques taught to him by his teacher, he starts to practice them while remembering that his teacher remarked that he had the most potential among the students. As a result of this strategy, he levels up and is able to survive for more than 41 minutes. After his 28th death, he walks around in hell, thinking that his body feels lighter and wondering if he has leveled up further. Just then, he receives notification that the poison in his body has reached the critical limit, giving him the unique skill of poison blood. Realizing that the poison can no longer damage him, Hyunmoo feels confused, wondering what has happened. He wonders if breathing in the fine dust has really given him poison resistance, which led him to attain such a valuable skill. Considering all that, he feels confused, thinking that it does not make any sense. While walking around the area, he finds crystal mosses lying everywhere and takes them in his hand, thinking that if they were real, he would have become so rich. As a result of holding the crystal moss, a window appears in front of him, asking if he would like to collect them. Confused about what it is asking, Hyunmoo clicks the accept button, causing the crystal moss in his hand to disappear and notifying him that his inventory has been activated. After successfully putting it in his inventory, he turns to his window, which displays information about the crystal moss, and realizes that he was unaware of his ability to do something like that. Feeling excited, he thinks that he can do all sorts of things from then on. While looking at the window, he starts to hear a strange sound, wondering what that is, and turns around to find a huge cloud of mosquitoes rushing towards him. Confused, he starts to run away, wondering what it is, when the system informs him that these are higher-level mosquitoes, causing him to remark that he can tell it by just looking. However, before he can get away, the mosquitoes surround him from all directions, causing him to panic. Shocked, he wonders how mosquitoes can gather in such huge numbers when they start entering his body from his mouth. Following that, they start to cover his entire body from the outside as well and suck his blood to such an extent that their bodies reach their capacity and ultimately start to explode. This leads him to experience death once again, and he wakes up in a different location, finding his level to have increased. He is informed that due to his ability of poison blood, the mosquitoes that sucked up his blood were all killed, leading to a rise in his abilities, which makes him confused. Looking at his hands, he wonders if the mosquitoes really died by sucking up his poison-infused blood. Suddenly, the window informs him that he has contracted an abnormal state disease that will lead him to slowly lose his health, causing him to get startled. Stating that he just came back from death, Hyunmoo asks how he can have the same experience again. Suddenly, he falls to the ground, breaking the leg of a chair placed nearby, and learns that he has acquired the normal skill of dismantling. The system explains that the accumulation of bacteria inside his body has led health to fall to a critical level, but the process of regeneration has started due to his title as the last survivor. Looking at the windows popping up and disappearing by themselves, he wonders what is happening, remarking that the system is having fun doing that. Looking at his newly acquired skill of dismantling, he remarks that it is a beneficial skill and wonders how he got it by just breaking a chair leg. However, considering that this place has such large-sized mosquitoes, Hyunmoo thinks that anything can happen there. Getting up, he grabs the broken chair in his hand, thinking that he should try his newly acquired skill, and utters the word dismantle. Suddenly, the chair gets disassembled into pieces that arrange themselves on the floor in order, leaving him astonished. Considering that he gained a dismantling skill by breaking a chair, he thinks of the possibility of gaining a new skill by making something up and tries it out. As a result, he gains a new skill called creation, which makes him excited. Considering that he has the ability to make anything, he decides to go ahead and make a shelter for himself. Activating his skill of creation, he thinks that he has no idea how long he will have to stay in such a place or what type of opponents he might face. Therefore, in order to live a little longer in such a place, he thinks it is necessary to make some sort of safe shelter for him. To do that, he decides to use his crystal moss as a raw material. As he is about to do it, he comes across a newspaper that has fallen on the floor and picks it up, trying to read what is written on it. As a result of his attempt to read, he gains the new skill of understanding different languages, becoming surprised. Using the skill, he begins to read and finds an article about Li Jitei and a specific place, thinking that this place seems like the one where he was previously. After contemplating for a few moments, he turns around and looks at the place, wondering if this is the same place he was at before, which has now gone to ruins. However, considering that he cannot do anything about it, he turns to the mosquitoes, thinking that he should first do what he can, and starts to dismantle them. After some time, he lies on the ground exhausted from dismantling everything while the legs, wings, and blood of mosquitoes lie on the ground beside him separately. Making a set of these items, he wonders what he can make of them and activates his skill of creation. To his surprise, a hell dart appears in front of him, causing him to realize how easy it is for him to obtain such a rare item like this. Thinking that he needs to do a little research on it, he starts to make countless such darts. After some time, with the last set of items remaining, he sits down, swinging his arm around, feeling strained from the activity. After doing this exercise for some time, he activates his production skill again, which unexpectedly results in the creation of an unknown egg, a legendary item. Astonished, Hyunmoo holds the egg in his hands, remarking that it is almost the size of his fist. He is informed that there is a 50% chance for the egg to be alive or dead, and he needs to observe it in order to find out what it carries, along with meeting certain requirements. After observing it quietly for some time, he puts it inside his jacket and closes his eyes. A few moments later, the window pane of the building he is sitting inside shatters into pieces, startling him. Wondering what it was, he quickly turns around to find a red-capped goblin entering the building with a weapon in its hand. Looking at it from behind a pillar, Hyunmoo wonders why a goblin is in such a place when the creature notices him and rushes towards him at great speed. Realizing that it has found him, Hyunmoo quickly runs away to save his life and reaches a staircase. Thinking that he cannot fight such a strong monster, Hyunmoo starts to climb up the stairs while the goblin keeps following him. Looking at the goblin, he realizes that he has no option but to fight it and summons a wooden stick from his inventory, hitting the monster with it and causing it to fall down the stairs. Enraged, the goblin, who turns out to be a level 20 creature, gets up and rushes towards him at great speed, fiercely swinging his weapon around. As it starts to launch continuous attacks, Hyunmoo tries his best to block them and fight back. However, the swift speed of the goblin proves to be a great advantage for it, leading it to break Hyunmoo's wooden stick. After doing that, the creature starts uttering something in a strange language, leaving Hyunmoo shocked at its ability to speak. Following that, the goblin continues to launch swift attacks, causing Hyunmoo to get injured. Reaching for his inventory once again, Hyunmoo unleashes his hell darts and throws them towards the goblin. In response, the goblin slashes all of them with his weapon at a swift speed, causing Hyunmoo to be shocked by its precision. However, without the goblin realizing it, one of the darts pierces through its hand, causing it to swell abnormally and start melting. Seeing that, the goblin raises its weapon in the air and cuts the infected arm, leaving Hyunmoo shocked at its guts. Looking at its half-melted arm, Hyunmoo wonders if this happened because his poisonous blood was on the dart. While he is thinking that, the goblin suddenly disappears, making him confused. A few moments later, it suddenly appears above Hyunmoo's head, attempting to launch a surprise attack. Looking at how close it is, Hyunmoo realizes that this is the end for him when the goblin reaches close and slashes his body with the blade, causing him to crash to the ground. Observing him lying down, the goblin starts to walk away, remarking that there are still humans left in this place, while Hyunmoo, whom the goblin thought to be dead, starts to smile. With his wounds slowly healing, he is informed that he will be resurrected according to the perks of his title, The Last Survivor. Vowing to seek his revenge from the goblins, he keeps lying on the ground to regain his stamina, getting a notification that he has successfully cleared the quest. As the sun begins to rise, Hyunmoo looks around, realizing that he has finally done it. As a reward for clearing the quest, he gets one gold box and is informed that he can use the return stone until the start of the next quest. Learning that the next quest is going to start in 14 days, he takes out the necklace and holds it tightly in his hand, causing the same bright light to emerge from it. Thinking that he can finally go back to his home, he closes his eyes and opens them after some time, finding himself lying on the street amidst the heavy rain. Realizing that he is finally back in the real world, he gets up feeling overjoyed. Removing the necklace from his neck, he decides to discard it, believing that the only thing his father left him has brought numerous difficulties upon him. However, remembering the incredible skills he got because of this necklace, he feels reluctant to throw it away and sits down, wondering what to do. Watching him from inside, Yumin comes out and calls to him, stating that he cannot stay in the rain like this. Giving him her raincoat, she states that he can suffer from mana poisoning by staying there like that and states that they should move inside. She gives him her raincoat, stating that he can suffer from mana poisoning by staying there like that and suggests that they should move inside. Taking him inside the house, she gives him a mana contamination remover, telling him to use it, but he states that he is all right. Annoyed by his reply, Yumin asserts that he does a job where he has to deal with crystal moss every day and will regret it later, causing him to agree to use it. After taking a bath, Hyunmoo comes out and asks about what day it is, and she reveals it to be September 11th, making him surprised. Turning to him, she asks if something happened, saying that she had been trying to contact him for the last 2 days but was unable to, which led him to do all the work alone. Realizing that he was only away for 2 days, Hyunmoo thinks that it felt like years to him. He wonders why he was at the industrial complex after coming back despite being at home when he disappeared. Meanwhile, Yumin changes the topic, stating that she will buy him whatever he needs, causing him to ask where his clothes are and stating that he can just wear those. Pointing at the trash bag placed near the door, she states that there is no way he can wear those, revealing that they were contaminated and torn up. After saying that, she leaves the house to buy new clothes for him, telling him that she will be back soon. The moment she leaves, a window appears in front of Hyunmoo, making him confused. Looking at the gold box appearing in the window, he remembers that he got it as the reward for clearing the quest and clicks it. As a result, the box opens, and it is revealed that he has earned the legendary skill of Battle Helper as a quest reward. Looking at the word legendary skill, Hyunmoo recalls that it is difficult to get even the common skills, and if one gets a rare one, they receive special treatment. Considering that he has a skill that only 7 people in the world have, Hyunmoo realizes that he has become the 8th legendary skill bearer. Focusing on what skill he got, he wonders if Battle Helper means he will get a helper to fight alongside him during battle, remarking that it does not have even a single line of explanation. While he is thinking about that, Yumin comes back, holding new clothes for him. Without noticing her, Hyunmoo begins to swing his fists around while wondering how to use that skill, confusing her. Calling out to him, Yumin asks what he is doing, causing him to feel embarrassed, while she states that she will just pretend as if she didn't see anything. After he wears the clothes, Yumin tells him that she wanted to take him to the hospital, but because he looked strangely healthy, she brought him to her home instead. Considering that he must be having some powers to heal himself, Yumin asks why he is working as an ordinary collector in that case. In response, Hyunmoo reveals that it has not been long since he gained unique abilities, causing her to contemplate a little. Remembering something, Hyunmoo turns to Yumin, recalling that she was researching something, and she agrees, stating that it was about crystal moss. Hearing that, Hyunmoo asks her to take a look at the object he has for him, making her confused. As she stares at him in confusion, he begins to summon something from his inventory, stating that he took it by chance and is not sure about its worth. As soon as the object appears, Yumin is left in shock, looking at a 1-kilogram piece of crystal moss in his hand. After remaining awestruck for a few moments, she shouts out, stating that it cannot be possible. Calling it impossible again and again, Yumin expresses her shock, asking where he got this from, prompting him to ask if this is what is important. Stating that it is indeed important, Yumin remarks that it is impossible to come across a crystal moss that is so pure and is at least at the level of a 5-star object. Stating that Yumin is a collector because of her research, Hyunmoo clarifies that he has no intention of giving this crystal moss to her, causing her to feel annoyed. He states that the only way she can get it from him is by finding out how he can sell it. In response, she states that because of its size and purity, he will need certain documents to prove that it is real in order to sell it, causing him to ask if size is really the problem. While she is about to explain further, Hyunmoo breaks the crystal into two, thinking that it will solve the problem of size, leaving her shocked. Enraged by his impulsiveness, she begins to hit him hard, causing him to explain that he has more crystals and even bigger ones. Hearing that, she calms down, asking if he really has more, and he agrees, asking if he can sell the broken crystal, and she agrees. Proceeding forward, Hyunmoo mentions that he has two conditions for selling, which include keeping the location of the crystal moss and its seller a secret. Agreeing to the conditions, Yumin takes the crystal moss from him, stating that following these conditions is better than seeing it broken into pieces. She explains that the crystals have a level of purity that can only be obtained in the first dungeon and expresses her disappointment at him crushing such precious items just to sell them. In response, Hyunmoo states that he will decide upon giving the crystals to her on the basis of how well she does with the sale and gets up to leave. Taking the trash bag, he suggests going out and buying some more clothes, while she stops him, offering him to rest there. The next morning, she gets ready, informing Hyunmoo that she is going to meet the buyer that she contacted the previous day. 1 week later, while going to meet the buyer for the final selling procedures, Yumin remarks that Hyunmoo did not have to come along, but he states he came in case anything happened. In response, she states that it is really not as dangerous a trade as he thinks. Hyunmoo thinks that although he is the one asking her to do that, there are a lot of people in society who are on the verge of losing everything due to these trades. Engrossed in his thoughts, he starts moving in the wrong direction, causing Yumin to drag him along in the right direction. As they enter a cafe, Hyunmoo looks at the person sitting in front of them and feels negative vibes from him, thinking that his decision to come along was right. However, instead of the person he is looking at, Yumin takes him to another table, telling a person seated there that she has come with her partner. Surprised, Hyunmoo looks at the person he was thinking of as the buyer, realizing that he was wrong. Meanwhile, the elderly person seated at the table wearing a hat looks at him and extends his hand, addressing him as Park Hwaiso. In response, Hyunmoo shakes hands with him, introducing himself. Considering his strong grip, Hyunmoo realizes that Hwaiso is a strong person and thinks that they will not be able to win against him if he attacks. Just then, a window appears in front of him, telling him that his stats have increased due to his strong title, but he remarks that he has no intention of fighting. Meanwhile, Yumin gives Hwaiso a pouch containing small pieces of crystal moss, and he closely takes a look at them. After examining them all, Hwaiso turns to Yumin, asking if he needs to deposit the money in the same account he always does, and she agrees. Committing to sending the money soon, Hwaiso gets up to leave and bows in courtesy, sharing his hopes to meet again, causing Hyunmoo to feel a strange pressure. After he leaves, Yumin turns to Hyunmoo, remarking that he has never greeted her like that before. Thinking that his behavior was indeed very different than usual, Hyunmoo wonders if Hwaiso has figured out that he was the one who dug these crystal mosses up. While he is thinking about that, Yumin turns to him and jokes that she was expecting Hwaiso to take out a knife and demand everything without any money, causing him to feel frustrated. Observing his expression, she tells him not to feel so downcast, stating that the type of trade he was expecting also happens in some cases, intensifying his frustration. Checking her phone, Yumin asks Hyunmoo to share how he feels after seeing $10 million deposited into his account and shows him his updated account balance. Meanwhile, Hwaiso gets inside his car when another person already seated inside asks how the trade went, and he remarks that it was perfect. Looking at the pieces of crystal moss, he states that they will make up a huge crystal when combined together and wonders how these were randomly going around in the market. Holding a blood-stained crystal in his hand, the other person remarks that, along with obtaining the crystal moss with such a high purity level, Hyunmoo is a very strong hunter. The person states that he can keep himself hidden and that if he intends on exploring 5-star dungeons and considers him to be from a foreign country's clan, he is not interested in Korea. Hearing that, Wei-so shares his astonishment at Hyunmoo's suspicious identity and remarks that they will need to observe him and Yu-min a little. Remarking that with this level of goods, they can overcome difficult trials, the person gives all the credit to Wei-so for obtaining them. Putting the crystals back in the pouch, he remarks that to collect this kind of crystal moss that only grows in a dungeon all alone, the collector has to be very strong. In response, Wei-so states that he must be at least the level of the captain, causing the person to command him to investigate about Hyunmoo and Yu-min further. Complying, Wei-so tells him to leave it to him, addressing him as Captain Lee Jite, while Jite looks at him with a smile, holding the crystal moss. A few days later, Hyunmoo returns to Hell, doing chin-ups to increase his strength and stamina. After struggling to complete only 150 repetitions, he jumps down, reflecting that he could have done another 1,000 if he weren't in Hell. Feeling utterly exhausted, he ponders why his stamina has dropped to such a level and recollects that he arrived in Hell about 18 hours ago. Looking at the return stone, he feels relieved to have grasped its working mechanism after using it a few times. He concludes that the time spent in Hell correlates with real-world time, aligning with the remaining time in the quest. However, the only problem that remains is his location, which changes every time he comes back from Hell. He wonders about the reason behind this and feels frustrated for being unable to discover it despite his efforts. Thinking about his unique skill, Battle Helper, Hyunmoo recalls that such a skill in games resembles an illicit cheat or hack. For him, possessing such a skill so openly implies that reaching this point without it would have been impossible. Considering this, he moves toward a punching bag and starts punching it, triggering his Battle Helper skill. As he continues to punch the bag, he feels something strange, considering that he is gradually locking in on a single spot. While he is thinking, the punching bag breaks down, leaving him astonished. Looking at his hand, he contemplates if the skill remembered and adjusted all his movements, connecting this with the concept of a helper, which he finds impressive. Just then the system informs him that his second quest, the Beginner's Friend, is about to start, in which he needs to eliminate 5 beginner scarecrows. Surprised by the simplicity of the task, Hyunmoo turns to the system, remarking that such a quest should have been given at level 1, while he is now at level 7. Frustrated at the task of killing scarecrows, Hyunmoo notes their absence in the area since his arrival. Nevertheless, driven by the need to level up, he decides to venture out and search for them. After walking through the dark streets filled with crystal moss, he eventually reaches a basement, remarking that it looks like a horror movie. Countless beginner scarecrows stand before him, resembling robots, leaving him perplexed about their nature. Examining them closely, Hyunmoo finds their scary appearance intimidating and views their status window, realizing that their level is not mentioned. Apprehensive that they might suddenly spring to life, Hyunmoo picks up a wooden board from the ground and uses it as a shield, thinking that it would be better to be careful. Summoning a hell dart, he hurls it at one of the scarecrows, which merely bounces off their steel bodies. Having no idea how to deal with them, he quietly sits behind the wooden board, observing them. As time passes and the scarecrows remain motionless, he concludes that they are stationary figures. Deeming them easy targets, he approaches and delivers a forceful punch, expecting an easy victory. Strangely, despite a precise strike, none of the scarecrows are hit, leaving him puzzled. Wondering why his punch did not land accurately, he looks ahead of him and finds the scarecrow leaning backward in order to dodge the attack. All of a sudden, their eyes begin to glow with a notification that they have completed the recognition of the opponent, and their level is revealed to be exactly equal to that of Hyunmoo. This revelation astonishes Hyunmoo, who realizes that these creatures adjust their level to match their opponents. He laments the lack of prior information about this. Meanwhile, the scarecrows initiate a sparring match with him, causing him to realize that their movements are very slow compared to those of the goblins he met earlier. He remembers that his level 7 status in the real world equates to that of a bodyguard or a soldier with around 5 years of experience. However, in this hellish realm, this level of power merely designates him as a beginner, leading to his frustration. After evading their attacks for some time, Hyunmoo's frustration mounts, and he rises with determination to defeat them all. Activating his Battle Helper ability, he starts advancing towards them, waiting for them to launch an attack. After observing him for some time, one of the scarecrows leaps up in the air, trying to launch a forceful punch. However, before it can do that, Hyunmoo's hands begin to move automatically, grabbing the scarecrow and throwing it backwards. Just then, another one of them grabs his neck from behind, causing him to feel intense pain. In order to get rid of it, he starts to hit it with his elbows and then quickly turns around, launching a punch at its steel face, causing it to crack. Looking at it, Hyunmoo wonders if his attack worked when their battle target data suddenly updates, shifting their sparring from level 1 to level 2. While Hyunmoo is trying to make sense of what is happening, all of them suddenly come into action and grab him by his hair, arms, and legs, making him unable to move. Meanwhile, the scarecrow standing in front of him with a damaged face runs towards him and launches a forceful punch at his face, followed by his stomach. Just like that, they keep on torturing him, leading to an increase in his body's solidity, hemorrhage resistance, and pain resistance. After some time, when he completely loses his energy and his stamina falls below 10%, he gets a notification that he will be resurrected according to the perks associated with his title. As he starts to heal, he looks up at the scarecrows surrounding him and wonders if he should run. However, considering that he has been unable to launch even a single good hit on them, he gets up, charging his hand with powerful energy in order to compete against their martial arts. Suddenly, a huge piece of lumber appears in his hand with the notification that it is a heinous club that has been strengthened and has an impressively high attack power. Holding it tightly in his hands, Hyunmoo rushes towards them while the scarecrow stands still in a defensive position. As soon as he draws near, he launches a forceful hit on the arm of one of them, causing it to break down and fall apart, leaving him astonished. As a result of receiving the damage, the scarecrows update their battle target data once again, causing their arms to open up and unleash strong weapons, leaving Hyunmoo shocked. These weapons make the scarecrows much more powerful than before, causing Hyunmoo to suffer defeat and death once again. Resurrecting once again, Hyunmoo continues to fight against them, dodging their attacks and launching forceful counterattacks, defeating them one by one. Thinking that he can finish it off in a one-on-one fight with the help of the Battle Helper skill, he continues to fight against them fiercely in an attempt to break them apart. However, every time he deals some damage to them, their battle target data updates, causing their level to rise. Watching that, Hyunmoo smiles, stating that every time the level increases, he also gets stronger than before. However, this proves to be of no use to him since he keeps on facing death again and again because of their excellent martial arts. Observing the different types of martial arts the scarecrows are using against him, Hyunmoo remarks that this is not a martial arts exhibition, asking how many techniques they know. Meanwhile, a scarecrow comes towards him once again, ready to fight, while he gives a smirk and gets up, determined to win against them in a fist fight. However, as soon as he draws near, attempting to launch an attack, the scarecrow effortlessly dodges it, moving towards his back. Swiftly turning around, he tries to launch a kick that is dodged again. However, after a few failed attempts, when he finally manages to deal some damage to the scarecrow, its battle data updates again, increasing its sparring level once more. Just as the level increases, the scarecrow brings its fingers near Hyunmoo's eyes and hits them with such force that he crashes to the ground, holding his eyes and feeling a lot of pain. Following that, the creature runs towards him, opens its mouth, and starts to bite his legs, causing him to experience immense agony. Screaming out of pain, Hyunmoo tries to kick the scarecrow away, but it does not let go of his leg, causing him to ask if it is a dog. Finally, unable to endure such intense pain any further, Hyunmoo dies once again. After experiencing death 9 times during the fight, Hyunmoo realizes 3 facts. The first one among those is that the highest level of combat is level 4, after which all the patterns of their movements become the same, making them quite predictable. The second thing that he observes during the fight is the fact that the scarecrows have exactly the same pattern of movement, and if they somehow make a different move, they stop to correct it. Lastly, in order to defeat them, there is no need to destroy them since they will stop moving by themselves if damaged a lot. Considering all these 3 facts in view, Hyunmoo starts to fight efficiently against them, damaging them one by one and causing them to get defeated. Upon defeating every scarecrow, he keeps getting a notification that he has completed his sparring, encouraging him to continue that and complete this quest. Finally, after defeating all of the opponents, Hyunmoo gets a notification that his quest has been cleared, causing him to let out a cry of celebration. Looking at the scarecrows turned into countless pieces lying in his surroundings, he remarks that it looks so good to see that and crashes to the floor. Feeling very exhausted by the battle, He remembers that he wanted to fight something that was on his level and realizes how dangerous the outcome was. Looking at his injured and trembling hands, he wonders how the quest was named Friend of a Beginner when it was almost on a teacher's level. Getting up, he decides to look into the rewards he got as a result of clearing this quest before returning. Notifying that the quality of his reward has been increased due to his title, it is revealed that he has gotten a reward known as the Cradle of Heaven. Following that, a piece of cloth appears in his hand, making him confused, while the system explains that it is a legendary reward that accelerates growth and restores damage in the body. While understanding what restoring damage means, Hyunmoo feels confused about how it can accelerate growth and observes the cloth, wondering how to use it. Wondering if wrapping it around his head can make him smarter, he tries it out but does not feel any impact and quickly removes it, relieved that no one saw that. Thinking that he does not need to restore his damages with it, either since he can easily come back after dying, Hyunmoo deems the clothes to be useless to him. Therefore, he decides to sell it, thinking that it must be quite expensive because it is a legendary item. Just then, he notices the unknown egg in the window in front of him and remembers that he got it as a product when he was dismantling the mosquitoes. Thinking that the cloth might work on the egg, he summons it and puts the cloth above it, waiting for it to experience some growth. However, even after a lot of time, he does not notice any impact and comes to the conclusion that the cloth is completely useless to him and it would be better to sell it. However, just as he removes the cloth from above the egg, it starts to hatch, making him confused. Looking at the egg, Hyunmoo wonders if a strange cannibal monster is going to come out of it, thinking that he is not confident enough to win against a creature like that. Feeling anxious, he keeps on looking at the egg, which gradually starts to crack more and more. Suddenly, a bright light emerges from within the egg, causing it to completely shatter apart. As the light fades away, it reveals a small fairy sleeping inside the egg, making Hyunmoo astonished. A few moments later, she opens her eyes and gets up, leaving the egg shell, causing Hyunmoo to realize who she is. Looking at how adorable she is, Hyunmoo smiles, bringing his finger near her and remarking that she is smaller than he thought. Thinking of his finger as her food, she bites it with her sharp teeth, causing him to scream in pain and remarking that she is a crazy cannibal monster. While he considers it a very useless reward, the fairy lies on the ground, stating that she is hungry. Taking a sigh, he reaches for his pockets and takes out a candy, telling her to eat that instead. However, she refuses to take it, prompting him to ask what else she wants. In response, she points to him, causing him to remark that she is really a cannibal monster. Piercing her small, needle-like stick into his arm, she then starts to suck up his blood while he keeps telling her to stop it. As he tries to take her away with his hand, she stops him, stating that she has heard him and will help him stop his bleeding, telling him not to worry. After that, she turns to the wound on his arm made by her stick and starts to lick it, causing him to realize that because this egg was made by dismantling the mosquitoes, she is a mosquito fairy. Meanwhile, the fairy starts to fly up, remarking that it was a satisfying meal and telling Hyunmoo to bring a dessert for her, calling him her slave. Annoyed to hear that, Hyunmoo grabs her tightly, asking what she said while she repeats that it was an amazing meal, expressing her gratitude to him and addressing him again as her servant. While he keeps tightening his grasp, she changes the title from servant to butler and thanks him again. Finally letting go of her, Hyunmoo introduces himself by his name, asking what she is. In response, she thinks about it for a while and then states that she does not remember it, causing him to remark that she is really a mosquito fairy, which makes her feel annoyed. After a few moments, she finally remembers who she was and reveals that she is a fairy that is supposed to appear at the end. Hearing that, Hyunmoo asks if she is there to save the world, but she disagrees, revealing that her task is to eat up all the living organisms when the world comes to an end. This revelation leaves Hyunmoo in shock, causing him to wonder if he should just kill her at that moment in order to avoid this danger. Hearing her purpose of arrival, Hyunmoo feels shocked, wondering if such a small creature is going to eat everything. Just then, he comes to realize that his blood was poisonous and melted the hand of the goblin even with a few drops. However, looking at the mosquito fairy completely fine after drinking such a poisonous thing, he wonders how it can be possible. He thinks that he cannot even use Battle Helper against her since she is not hostile towards him and wonders what her skills and level might be. Thinking that he will not be able to kill her in any way, Hyunmoo wonders if he should just tame her and use her as a pet. Pondering that, he turns towards her, stating that no matter what her intentions are, he wants to name her Renian, causing her to remark that it is a great name. Thinking that she liked the name, Hyunmoo calls it great, while she remarks that the name sounds similar to the agent of the apocalypse in pixie tongue. After staring at her in confusion for a while, Hyunmoo states that if she wants to follow him, she will have to promise him one thing, which is to avoid eating humans. Stating that he does not care about others, Hyunmoo specifically forbids her to eat him, stating that if she feels extreme hunger, she can go and devour someone else but not him. While she feels disappointed by that, he states that he can still give her some of his blood in return, causing her to feel happy. While walking out of the place, Renian notices the scarecrows lying on the floor reduced to pieces and asks what those are. In response, Hyunmoo laughs, stating that this is something like a glorious battlefield of the victorious. While talking, he suddenly notices that one of the scarecrows has been ripped into two parts and thinks that he did not do it with any of them. Just then a window appears in front of him, notifying him that the trait of Valiant Energy has been added to his ability of Battle Helper. Wondering if it only works while the skill is activated, Hyunmoo reaches for one of the scarecrows and puts it in a standing position, intending to try it out. Activating his skill of Battle Helper, he launches the forceful punch on the scarecrow, causing it to break into countless pieces, leaving him astonished. Watching that, Renian becomes impressed, stating that she also wants to try it and goes near a scarecrow, launching a punch that causes it to deal the same amount of damage as the other one. As a result of receiving continuous damage, the scarecrows activate the process of opponent recognition and start to get up one by one again, leaving them startled. Surrounding them, one of the scarecrows states that they have been recognized as superhumans, which has caused the lock to be deactivated. Hearing that, Hyunmoo wonders what they are talking about when one of the scarecrows points in a specific direction, revealing a pile of broken furniture. Looking at it, Hyunmoo wonders if there was a place like that before and starts to remove the furniture, while Renian remarks that something smells really fragrant inside. Curious to know what it might be, Hyunmoo starts to quickly remove the furniture and finally reaches a table with the skeleton lying on it and a letter under its hand. While Hyunmoo is looking at the skeleton with confusion, Renian starts to eat its bones, causing him to feel disgusted. Pulling her away, he forbids her to consume even dead humans, while she argues against it, remarking that she found it really yummy. Taking the bone from her, he puts it back and takes the letter from underneath its hand. Reading the first line stating, "I have made many mistakes," Hyunmoo remarks that the start is very grim. As he continues reading further, the person states that it has been 3 years since the level rose to a nightmare, causing the situation to get worse and leading the newborn children to die. This caused even the ability users to lose hope and take their lives, causing everyone to consider that mankind is going to become extinct. Reading it, Hyunmoo wonders if it is for real, remembering that he also got a similar message when he entered this place and realizing that it is the future of the world he lives in. Considering that all the high-level ability users also died, he wonders who might have written this letter when Renian calls out to him, showing him a return stone and asking what it is. Matching the stone with the one he has, Hyunmoo remarks that they are both different in appearance, while Renian asks if it belongs to the skeleton. After a little contemplation, Hyunmoo asks Renian to hand over the stone to him for a second, and she complies, extending the stone towards him. However, as soon as he touches the stone, a bright light emerges from it, leaving them both shocked and confused. Wondering what is happening, Hyunmoo feels his hand have gotten stiff in front of the stone and tries to move it away, but is unable to do that. After a few moments, cracks start to appear in the stone, causing it to shatter into countless pieces, leaving Hyunmoo shocked. Feeling a lot of pain in his hand, Hyunmoo finally takes his hand backwards and looks at it, finding the symbol of the stone to be imprinted on his palm and becoming shocked. Shortly after, a window appears in front of him, revealing that the stars are watching him, and the roof of the building slowly transforms into a sky filled with bright stars. As the stars start to come near him, engulfing his body, Renian goes away, telling him to make it out by himself. As he keeps calling her from behind, the stars completely engulf him, causing him to get transported into an open space where he floats in the air, wondering what place it is. While floating in the open space, he feels confused and looks around, calling out to Renian. However, instead of Renian, a window appears in front of him. notifying him that the advancing star Barul has recognized his absorption of the star fragment. Just then, a shining object comes floating at great speed behind him and hits him, making him confused. Informing him that Beryl is disappointed by his values, the system reveals that Barul has forfeited the star fragment inside him and moved away. Such a response causes him to feel frustrated, and he bursts into anger, asking who they are to be disappointed in him. Venting his frustration, he starts to hit the window in front of him, causing a notification of the lock being lifted to emerge. He is told that the owners of the stars are beings who have absolute rule over their own territory somewhere in space. These beings place their absolute power into fragments and lend them out with the expectation that their kin will use this power to become rulers and expand their territories. Stating that the window informs him that because he is in possession of one of those fragments, the rulers of the stars wish for him to become one of their kin. Reading these notifications, he contemplates for a while and then remembers the stone that Renian found, realizing that it was not a return stone but a star fragment. Just then he begins to hear a strange sound and turns around, wondering what it is, when a bright particle appears in the space in front of him. This particle suddenly transforms into several multicolored lights that reveal stars of different colors coming in his direction. Reaching near him, one of the stars known as the Monstral Star searches for his deceptive charm, while the conquering star, Arden, offers him command over an army of steel and fire. Meanwhile, the starving star Yagulim tells him to accompany it in looking for the snake that swallowed the previous world entirely. Similarly, all the stars of different colors start to offer different privileges in quests, making him confused about whatever they want him to do. The system explains to him that the stars want to invest in him after seeing his capabilities and asks him to choose a star to follow, surprising him. In response, Hyunmoo states that he needs to know at least a few things about them in order to make a choice. Considering that the system starts to tell him about every star in detail, starting from Gaul, an absolute ruler indulged in backscreen conspiracy and secret organizations. After that comes the wailing star Verde, who is popularly known as the father of all grief and melancholy, rules an army of the dead, and enjoys watching the despair after destruction. The starving star Yulim is a snake of greed and desire whose citizens are plagued by constant starvation, and he wishes to swallow everything in the world. The whispering star Monstril is the one who investigates in the light and deceives in the dark. She shines the brightest in the brightest of places and can deceive any powerful being, making them kneel at her feet. The conquering star, Arden, is a loser who advances with fire, slaughters his enemies with steel, and wants to burn down the world with meaningless hate and resentment. After learning about all of these, Hyunmoo wonders why they are all evil and turns to the window, remarking that they all seem to have personality disorders. In response, the system reveals that the stars only become interested in those who resemble them, causing Hyunmoo to feel a little embarrassed. Taking a deep breath, Hyunmoo states that the system considers him to have the nature of a conspiracist with a personality disorder and expresses his frustration at such a remark. Venting his anger, he asks if they think the reason he fell into hell was because he was a bad person. As he goes on to express his anger, the stars stare at him with confusion while he states that despite not being fully righteous, he did not live a life of embarrassment. Thinking that despite being a failure, he is better than these cruel stars, he turns to them, stating that there is something he is curious about, and asks what will change on the basis of his choice. In response, Gaul displays an illusion in front of him in which he views himself killing deadly monsters, becoming famous among people, and holding high ranks. Watching all that, he wonders if it is really the power of the stars, while the system keeps on urging him to choose a star to follow. After a little contemplation, Hyunmoo comes to the conclusion that the hard times that he has faced so far prove that the stars are not going to give him all they are showing so easily. Therefore, he turns to them once again, asking if there is a price he will have to pay as a result of his choice. In response, the system tells him that the only thing he will have to do is serve and follow the star he chooses, causing him to ask if that is all. Agreeing, the system tells him that stars raise their kin, and their kin will serve as a proxy for them, which is their purpose. Hearing that, he stays silent for a while and then asks if he will have to make a choice at that moment, causing the system to remark that choosing a star is a very rare opportunity. It explains that if Hyunmoo receives their acknowledgement and continues to succeed in the trials, his growth will become much faster. However, instead of choosing the stars, Hyunmoo keeps on asking more and more questions, causing the system to remark that the stars are displeased with his arrogance. Looking at this notification, Hyunmoo stays silent for a while and then turns to the stars, stating that power without a price is good. However, remarking that they were the ones who approached him themselves, he tries to explain that he has met them for the first time and cannot make a choice without any trust or a contract. He remarks on their urgency for him to make the choice to be very forceful. Hearing that, Arden the conquering star becomes annoyed by him taking so much time, which causes him to lose interest in Hyunmoo and leave the place. Watching him leave, Hyunmoo turns to the other stars, stating that they can also leave if they want. However, instead of leaving, the stars allow him to have some time to think carefully and make a decision. Thanking them for caring about him, he says that he will try not to take too long and make a decision soon. At that very moment, he is transported back from the open space to the room he was previously in. While looking around in confusion, he suddenly notices the whispering star behind him and asks why she has followed him to this place. In response, the star comes near his hand, causing it to itch a little, and then disappears. Just as she goes away, Hyunmoo gets a notification that she has awakened a portion of his abilities, causing him to acquire the legendary skill Domination. Remarking that she is giving him a big bribe, Hyunmoo turns to the window, thinking that the stars are powerful beings that can give away legendary skills like that. However, he feels confused about why the stars cannot block the hell difficulty despite having immense power, thinking that they must have given the same to a lot of other people as well. After thinking deeply about it, Hyunmoo comes to the conclusion that a level of difficulty that even the ability users cannot pass through is something that only those stars can create. Therefore, he decides to find out more about the stars. After traveling back to the real world, Hyunmoo finds himself in a strange place and keeps wandering here and there, trying to find out where he is. After 3 days, when he finally reaches a street, a child standing there thinks of him as a beggar because of his rough appearance, making him realize that this is something out of his control. Reaching back to Yumin's house, he expresses his desire to buy his own house, making her surprised. He explains that he wants a house with sturdy walls and clean and disinfected rooms, causing her to remark that this is not a problem at the moment. Hearing that, Hyunmoo becomes confused and asks if such houses do not exist, but she states that this is not the case. She explains that he might have a lot of money, but he has obtained it illegally and is not even registered as an ability user, which can make people think of him as suspicious. Hearing that, Hyunmoo feels embarrassed, but Yumin explains that she only wants to say that people might misunderstand him and that it is not like someone like him cannot buy a house. While preparing his lunch, Hyunmoo ponders whatever Yumin said and thinks that she was right about it because if he suddenly buys a house, people will surely find him suspicious. Therefore, he thinks it would be better to first get registered as an ability user and raise his rank after getting stronger. Remembering the ability of the stars to give him power, he suddenly comes to think about why the system only asked him to choose one star. Considering that all of them possessed incredible strength, he wonders why he cannot have them all and wants to have everything they are offering. Therefore, he makes it his goal to get stronger for his own survival if the world is destroyed, so that he can emerge as the ultimate ruler of the world. While he is thinking about that, Yumin comes from behind, telling him to eat his lunch instead of thinking so deeply. Taking the bowl of his noodles, he sits in front of the television, watching the news about Lee Jitae announcing the expedition plan of his clan for the Baekdu dungeon. Surprised at him undertaking such a task, they wonder if he will be able to do it and recall that this is the first time since North Korea was destroyed that this dungeon is to be raided. Yumin reveals that North Korea has been abandoned after experiencing the flood phenomenon, making Hyunmoo confused. She explains that it is a phenomenon where monsters come flooding out of a dungeon, and since Baekdu dungeon was a 5-star dungeon, the monsters emerging from it were also all 5-star. She tells him that if one does not have a weapon infused with mana, it is impossible to defeat such monsters. She considers such a mission to be a huge gamble and thinks that Lee Jitae is trying to seal it because he was the first one in Korea to raid it. Yumin recalls that the first time Jitae made such an announcement, all other clans remarked that it was impossible to do it, while Hyunmoo states that he does not clearly remember. After that, he gets back to his lunch and starts eating it when an announcement about user registration is made, stating that there is a test being conducted after 3 days. It is revealed that the Taesung clan, headed by Lee Jitae, will be recruiting a lot of people for their Baekdu dungeon expedition, which leaves Hyunmoo surprised. Turning to the television again, he states that he will have to check out more about the registration test. Meanwhile, Yoo-min, who feels frustrated at getting distracted again and again, tells him to focus on his lunch for now. 3 days later, on the day of the ability user registration test, a lot of people gather in the testing area, causing Hyunmoo to wonder how long he will have to wait because of such a big crowd. While he is thinking that, someone pushes him from behind, telling him to move forward, causing him to turn around in frustration. Looking at his angry expression, the person quickly apologizes and remarks that he seems to have come here for the first time to get evaluated, and he agrees. Hyunmoo remembers that the only time he got evaluated was when he was just a child in the orphanage, and he wonders why he was the only one who got evaluated at that time. Meanwhile, the person remarks that he looks like a total newbie and that the test takers do not filter the hunters from those who are new, making the place overcrowded. Hearing that, Hyunmoo asks if hunters have also arrived for the test, and the person agrees, stating that the Taesung clan will be doing an open recruitment, so everyone is here. In response, Hyunmoo asks if the person has also come for the open recruitment, but he disagrees, stating that he has just come to get his registered level updated. He reveals his purpose to be making the Ability User Bureau acknowledge his abilities to increase his value to others, while Hyunmoo turns around, realizing that registering abilities is only done to decide the value of a person. Hyunmoo thinks that it is natural for people to be obsessed with this. He thinks that this allows the Ability User Bureau to gain some of the control of the ability users, and if someone does anything that catches their attention, they are able to notice them right away. Considering that he decides to do it quickly and rise up in ranks before he gets caught, the announcement for the next group to enter is made, causing the person to push him inside. Upon his turn, he enters the registration room for the processes of identity check, stat check, and skill check. Going to the counter for the identity check, he hands over his identity card to the agent, who matches his face to the picture on the card. After that, he proceeds toward the stat checking counter, where the person takes a sample of his blood and puts it on a test paper. Finally, after the stat check comes the procedure of the skill check, which is also called combat ability evaluation in simple words. While he thinks that normal people are able to get close to a score of 100, his turn arrives. As he goes near the counter, the agent instructs him to put his arm inside a machine, and he follows, thinking that stats are only numbers that are not really significant. Meanwhile, the person tells him to clench the marble inside the machine tightly, and he follows, trying to find the marble inside the machine. After finding the marble, he clenches it tightly, causing a severe reaction to take place, which leaves both him and the agents shocked. While he sits confused about what it means, the agents start to note down their findings in astonishment. Looking at the number displayed by the machine, the agents feel utterly shocked, wondering if such a number even exists and thinking that the machine might have broken. While Hyunmoo sits on the chair, totally confused about whatever is happening, the agents start to argue amongst themselves about the possible reason for the machine to have broken. Calling them out, Hyunmoo asks if he broke the machine, but the agent assures him that it is not the case. Instead, the machine was malfunctioning and tells him that they will recalibrate. Saying that, they begin to fix up the machine while Hyunmoo looks at them, wondering if he needs to control his strength. After fixing up the machine, they tell him to put his arm in again and grip the marble, and he follows while trying to do it moderately this time. However, the same keeps getting repeated, causing them to recalibrate again and again, thinking that it is the fault in the machine while Hyunmoo becomes exhausted. Finally, without getting a complete review, he comes out of the room, while another agent announces that the crowd will be divided into 3 different lines based on their skills. Meanwhile, Hyunmoo goes to the counter for the pending review, and the woman sitting there takes his documents for a more detailed check. While going through the documents, she asks if his skill is ambiguous by any chance. Remembering the difficulty the agents faced during his skill check, he states that it seemed ambiguous, causing her to remark that he had passed the basic judgment for then. Putting his documents aside, she asks if he also intends to take the Hunter ability test, and he agrees, hearing which she takes out an information leaflet for him. Putting the documents in an envelope, she reveals that this test is going to be different from the usual ones because it is in collaboration with Taesung. She remarks that being a hunter does sound great, but they have a high risk of getting hurt or even dying during their missions. She reveals that the hunters who have lots of money are only in minority, while the majority of them live in bad financial conditions and have to do other jobs as well. In response, Hyunmoo reveals that he is not doing it for the money, causing her to ask if he wants fame and power instead. Disagreeing, he states that he only wants a sense of duty to protect the population, leaving her surprised and impressed. He explains that they have no idea if the dungeons in the distant future might be of a difficulty that humans cannot handle. Agreeing to that, the woman hands him the envelope containing the registration certificate and other documents, along with the hint that the theme of the test is going to be dungeons. While he skims through the documents, she states that reading them will help him a lot. Turning back to her, Hyunmoo shares his confusion about what kind of dungeons they are going to be. After some time outside the testing location, the members of the Taesung clan start to gather along with a huge crowd. This is followed by the arrival of Lee Jae, who receives a warm welcome. Getting out of the car, Jae turns to one of the members of his clan, asking if the preparations are going smoothly, and he agrees, stating that everything is going well. The person updates him that the Red Butterfly group has arrived and seems to be a target of many other clans as well, but assures him not to worry, revealing that their ultimate goal is Taesung. Disagreeing with it, Jae reveals that their goal is the Northern Expedition and not the Taesung clan. He highlights the fact that the members of this group, who have talent, sense, and even skills, ignored every clan till then, but after hearing about the raid, they all applied for the test. However, he believes that the members of the Red Butterfly group do not need to appear for the test and should be directly accepted. Walking away, Jae then asks about the other newcomers, and his clan member informs him that they are all weak and cannot compare to the Red Butterfly. However, after showing him the photograph and details of Hyunmoo, the clan member reveals that he is a very unusual ability user who has poison blood and gives the iPad to Jae. Watching the video of his skill test, Jae states that poison blood is a good skill, but it has many disadvantages and can make the rest of the people in his group suffer even with a little mistake. Telling them to simply keep him in mind, he returns the iPad to the clan member and walks ahead. Meanwhile, outside the test room, a few people stand along with Hyunmoo, waiting for the test to start. Suddenly a person comes out of the room and calls out to Hyunmoo, giving him a square-shaped tile and walking away. Holding the tile, Hyunmoo calls out to the person, asking him to explain what it is, but the person quietly walks away, making him surprised. While he is looking at the person, an announcement for the participants to enter the room is made, and all of them start to move inside the room. As they enter the room, they are told that it is the ability user's third gymnasium dungeon, which was modeled after the appearance of a 2-star dungeon in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Jae also arrives in a room with a screen displaying the dungeon and takes his seat to observe and evaluate them. It is explained that the goal of this test is to gather as many of the tiles that they receive when entering. Revealing that the theme of the test is dungeon, it is announced that their 3-hour-long test will now begin and the participants start to make preparations. Meanwhile, Jae watches them with interest. The agent explains that each person is carrying one tile, while the monsters carry 1 to 3, and the participant who collects the most will be receiving a reward. Considering that one of the participants accompanying Hyunmoo turns to the group, stating that just like the monsters in the dungeon, they themselves will also be a parry to others. Therefore, he suggests the group move together, to which all of them except Hyunmoo agree. Turning to him in confusion, they ask what he intends to do, and he explains that he wants to move alone. Surprised to hear that, the person explains that they have someone who uses a shield skill and someone who uses a recovery skill, but Hyunmoo replies that it does not matter. He states that the person who comes first with the most tiles will be the one to receive the reward, and if they move together, they will have to split up the reward, which he does not want. Surprised to hear his remark, they ask if this is the only reason he does not want to accompany them, and he agrees, stating that he does not need any other reason. Realizing that they will only have to fight with a group of 4, unlike others who have groups of 5, they become frustrated while Hyunmoo starts to walk away, stating that he does not care. However, before he can go away, one of the members of the group grabs him from his collar, stating that before someone else steals his tile, he should hand it over to them. Thinking that he is right, Hyunmoo quickly turns around and attacks the person, knocking him to the ground and taking away his tile. Stating that he forgot to take the tiles from them, he turns to the other members of the group, asking who wants to hand over their tile next. In response, the person heading the group quickly surrenders, prompting Hyunmoo to ask if they expect him to lead without taking the tiles if they give up. In response, the person throws his tile at Hyunmoo's feet, making him surprised. Looking at him, Hyunmoo asks what he is going to do if he gives the tile to him, and the person explains that there are no instructions for those who lose their tiles, which means they are not going to be disqualified only because of that. Revealing that the person Hyunmoo defeated a while ago was the one with the strongest shield skill, the group leader acknowledges that the rest of them are no match for him in that case. Considering it to be a smart approach, Hyunmoo states that he is alright as long as he gets the tiles, causing the person to take a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Lee Jitae, who is engrossed in watching the red butterfly, remarks that she is acting according to his expectations by stealing the tiles of all other participants. He states that because of being 2-star ability users, if her group members were to gather, they would definitely be able to clear a 3-star dungeon. While his clan members remark that it is incredible, Jiet states that if they get the support they need, they will be able to grow even more. However, he remarks that there is no need to pay much attention to their results, stating that as time passes, only those with talent will remain. He states that their real purpose is to look for talented people, with the basic aim being their survival. Considering their encounter with the monsters they have prepared for everyone, Jitae remarks that part of the test to be the most interesting. Looking at the robot-like monster standing in the dungeon, the clan member asks what it is when Jitae reveals that it is the newest development of the industry, an independent android. He explains that it is an android that has practice-use attack gloves and has an epidermis made from the spores of a mushroom monster found in the Chernobyl dungeon. Jitae reveals its official name to be Mushroom Droid, which is made by integrating only the best technologies. Watching the hunters face the android monsters, Jitae remarks on its exceptional compatibility along with its endurance and mana reflection abilities. In case the monster faces any damage, he states that because the spores of the epidermis have regeneration qualities, there are lesser repair costs. As they watch the ability users continuously getting defeated by the monsters, the clan member asks if it would not be difficult for them to win against its formidable strength. However, Jitae states that most of its attacks are weak, and if the team works together in collaboration, they should be able to take it on just fine. However, he considers it to be a problem for an individual like the red butterfly, who prefers to go solo, stating that she might take time to get used to its movements. He also considers it a problem for solo players to retrieve the tile from the monster's body on their own since it is deeply embedded within the droid. While engrossed in watching the red butterfly, Jada suddenly notices something strange, becoming surprised. Looking at the screen in confusion, the clan member asks what has happened, and he reveals that an unforeseen situation has occurred. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Hyunmoo stands facing the formidable droid, feeling disappointed at not coming across a real monster. Leaping up, he gets near the monster and launches a forceful punch to which the monster does not react, causing him to remark that it does not even make a sound in response. Landing back onto the ground, he realizes that the monster is a simple one that does not even move from its place, so he begins launching continuous attacks. Grabbing it from the feet, Hyunmoo hurls the monster away, causing it to crash to the ground, proving that it possesses very low stats. However, after defeating a lot of mushroom droids, he feels frustrated, realizing that such one-sided combat is very boring to him. Taking one of the defeated monsters in his hands, he activates his skill of Dismantle, causing it to get split up into parts, and takes the tile it possessed, remarking that this method is a convenient one. However, considering that it was way too easy to do, he wonders if it was alright and feels a little nervous. Just then, an announcement is made that 34 minutes have passed and more than 30% of the tiles have changed hands, and the people who currently possess them will be revealed. It is announced that Hongrian, who managed to collect 7 tiles, has scored the 3rd place. Red Butterfly, with 9 tiles, has got the 2nd place, and Hyunmoo, with 16 tiles, is on top. After hearing the announcement, Hyunmoo confidently sits down and plays with the body parts of the droid, thinking that they were a very easy targets compared to the real monsters. Looking at the spore eroders he received as a reward for getting the 1st position, he remarks that he expected something better. Considering that it might be the raw material from which the scarecrows in hell were made, he starts to tie them up around his arm, stating that it looks much more durable. However, realizing that it is not ordinary leather, he decides to make something out of it and activates his creation skills, causing a bright light to emerge from the area. As a result of applying his skill, he gets knee guards and arm guards made of spore eroders and wears them. After that, he gets up, swings his arms, and starts to walk away, intending to take care of the rest of the monsters. Meanwhile, Red Butterfly, who is frustrated after learning that Hyunmoo has surpassed her, wonders why she cannot get ahead of him. While she is thinking about that, a few people who recognize her from a distance start to rush towards her in order to catch her. However, as soon as they reach her, she leaps up and, with extremely swift moves, launches continuous attacks on them. While still in the air, she unleashes her extraordinary powers, launching countless attacks and causing a massive explosion to take place. After a while, she reaches back onto the ground and lands above the attackers, now lying unconscious. However, just as she finishes the fight, a lot of other ability users surround her, challenging her to fight against them. Just as she gets ready for the fight, Hongrian calls out to her, knocking out the people in her way, and reaches near her, expressing how worried she was for her. Hongrian explains that she also does not have enough points, but the points are not something that is important to them. Reminding her that their initial plan was to meet the Northern Expedition, Hongrian states that they have already gathered enough tiles to become eligible for that. In response, another member of her group agrees, stating that they already have 88 tiles, but Red Butterfly turns around, stating that it doesn't matter if they combine them all, saying that she starts to walk away, causing them to ask where she is going. Telling them to make sure they stay close, she leaps up in the air and disappears, leaving them confused and worried. Meanwhile, Lee Jitae looks at the top 3 participants on the screen, wondering who Hyunmoo is, and his clan member remarks that he seems to have been appraised for the first time. While discussing his skills and affinities, they wonder if he has prior experience with dungeons, while the clan member remarks that he seems to be quite used to dungeons. In that case, Jitae considers him to be a person who has entered the dungeon without permission, causing his clan member to ask if he thinks of Hyunmoo as a rogue. The clan member reveals that Hyunmoo does not have a previous criminal record or a license cancellation history, causing Jitae to remark that he might have come from outside the country. Considering that the regulations of the other countries are not that hard, Jitae thinks of something like that as possible and smiles. Thinking that it would be great to see both Hyunmoo and the Red Butterfly fight each other, Jitae shares his excitement to see the fight. Meanwhile, Hyunmoo tries to eat the remaining spore eroders but finds them disgusting and starts to throw up, realizing that it is difficult to consume them even when he is starving. Just then, he feels something strange approaching him and becomes surprised by its speed, realizing that it is a strong ability user. Considering that, he quickly turns around, finding Red Butterfly leaping up in the air to launch a surprise attack. Unable to block the attack, Hyunmoo crashes to the ground, realizing that she is indeed the strongest ability user in the test room. Looking at him, Red Butterfly asks if he is alone, and he jokingly remarks that he has 150 lackeys waiting for his order and inquires why she is asking. Understanding his sarcastic remark, Red Butterfly stays silent for a while and then speaks up, stating that he is indeed alone. Saying that she is looking forward to the fight, she gets ready to attack, causing Hyunmoo to realize that she is twice as powerful as him with a level up to 14. While he is thinking about that, she starts to rush towards him at a great speed and launches the punch, which he blocks using his armed guards, wondering how she is so strong. Considering that he might die if he gets hit, Hyunmoo keeps on blocking all of her attacks while feeling intense pressure. Meanwhile, the Red Butterfly keeps on launching continuous attacks, causing Hyunmoo to realize that he would have been in trouble if he did not have the skill of Battle Helper. However, despite being able to block her attack, her swift speed makes it impossible for him to find an opening and launch a counterattack. Sitting on the ground, exhausted, he realizes that he is going to lose at this rate. Considering that the skill he recently acquired was too dangerous to be used on humans, Hyunmoo thinks that it would be worth trying on someone like her. While he is thinking that, she leaps up to launch an attack once again, causing him to look up in excitement. Thinking that it is a do-or-die situation, he applies the variant energy to his skill of Battle Helper, increasing its power. Charging his hand with such overwhelming energy, he stands waiting for Red Butterfly to reach him while she keeps rushing towards him, intent on defeating him. As soon as Red Butterfly reaches near him, Hyunmoo swings his fist with all his might, causing a massive explosion of light to erupt that leaves her in shock. Instead of striking Hyunmoo, her arm starts to swell badly, causing her to scream in intense pain, unable to realize what happened. Sweating with exhaustion, Hyunmoo takes a deep breath and turns to her, telling her to give all of her tiles to him. Handing over her pouch of tiles, she surrenders, asking what the skill was that he used a while ago. However, before he can reply, he feels something strange and turns around when Hongrian suddenly pushes him with such force that he goes flying and crashes into a wall nearby. Lying down on the ground, Hyunmoo feels utterly shocked, wondering what has happened to him all of a sudden. Meanwhile, Hongrian and the other members of her group recognize Hyunmoo as the person who has the most tiles. One of the members of the group, named Red Snake, who surrendered to Hyunmoo at the entrance, introduces Hongrian to him, revealing that they are all in the same group. Meanwhile, Hongrian, looking at the swollen arm of Red Butterfuly, feels enraged, asking if Hyunmoo did that, but she tells her to forget it, stating that even both of them cannot defeat him. Meanwhile, Hyunmoo gets up, feeling frustrated at her interference in their fight, and states that he was the one who broke her arm, asking what they can do about it. However, before the argument can turn into a physical fight, it is announced that the 3 hours given to the participants have finished and the match is concluded. As the rankings are about to be announced, Hyunmoo looks up in anticipation, thinking that he must be the first one after defeating Red Butterfly. However, when the positions are announced, Hyunmoo realizes that he got second place while Red Butterfly got first place, which leaves both of them surprised. With a shock evident on his face, Hyunmoo asks how it can be possible while Hongrian places their pouches of tiles in front of Red Butterfly, stating that this is how they did it. Realizing that they have given all the tiles to her while he was preoccupied, Hyunmoo becomes disappointed, while Red Butterfly keeps on explaining that it is a misunderstanding. However, without listening to her, he starts to quietly walk away, causing Hongrian to ask where he is going without apologizing to their leader for hurting her arm. Hearing that he feels frustrated considering that he cannot afford to be noticed by others by showing his true powers there. He thinks that Hongrian ran behind her teammate and found them fighting, and without knowing the context, she has started to blame them for trying to rob them, stating that he just fought and won, but after stealing even the first place from him, they are making him look like a bad person, so he turns around, deciding to teach them a lesson. Activating his skill of domination, he ensnares Hongrian in an illusion where she finds Hyunmoo standing amidst numerous deadly monsters. Watching that, she starts to tremble in fear and falls to the ground, viewing even the Red Butterfly as a monster. Looking at the haunting surroundings, she starts to scream in fear, making her team members confused. As the healer in their team starts to heal her and the rescue team is called, Hyunmoo realizes that his attempt to teach her a lesson went much worse than he thought. Thinking that it would be better for him to leave the place, he starts to run away. Meanwhile, the clan member watching the fight with Jitae asks if the reason for her defeat is Red Butterfly letting her guard down. However, Jitae thinks of Hyunmoo's moves as being too accurate and precise and gets surprised by the fact that he is not even at the 10th level to be able to possess such extraordinary powers. Thinking that, he gets up while this clan member asks if they should meet Red Butterfly first, but he disagrees, stating that he wants to meet Hyunmoo first. Meanwhile, Hyunmoo, who sits in a room with other ability users, tries to cool himself down, thinking that the skill of domination has used up a lot of his mana. Feeling concerned about his quest in Hell, he thinks that he has only wasted his mana by using a skill that was not even required there. Meanwhile, the clan member calls out to him, prompting him to ask who he is. In response, he introduces himself as Ta Min-soo, the secretary team leader of the Taesung clan, and congratulates him on passing the test. Remarking that he possesses great skills, Ta Min-soo gives him his visiting card, stating that their clan wants to provide him with anything he needs in order to improve himself. Wishing him the best in order to reach his highest potential as a hunter, he states that they will help him reach a level beyond all clans. In response, Hyunmoo asks if they can help him reach the level of the stars, making him confused. Repeating his question, Hyunmoo asks if they can help him reach even the stars. While sitting in his car to leave, Jitae keeps on watching the fight between Red Butterfly and Hyunmoo again and smiles, remarking that it was as if he were watching a movie. Just then, Min-soo knocks on his car's window, and he opens it, remarking that he seems to have been rejected. Agreeing, Minsu states that Hyunmoo was not interested even when he raised the conditions. Hearing that, Jitae remarks that powerful people like him have a sense of pride in them and asks what he said while rejecting them. In response, Minsu reveals that he was talking about the stars, making Jitae shocked. He goes on to state that he thought it was some kind of new term that youngsters use but wasn't sure what it meant. Turning to Jitae, Minsu asks if he has any idea what it means, but Jitae remarks that he is also unaware of the term and has heard it for the first time. Changing the topic, Jitae asks about Red Butterfly, inquiring if she accepted the offer, and he agrees, stating that their sole purpose was to meet up with the Northern Expedition. After hearing all that, Jitae appreciates him for his effort and states that he is going to return home for that day and will see him the next day. With that, the car starts to move and Minsu wishes him a safe journey. While sitting in the car, Jitae thinks about the stars, realizing what Hyunmoo meant by it, and decides to keep a close eye on him. Meanwhile, Hyunmoo sits in the car with Yoo-min, looking at the visiting cards he received, causing her to ask what that is. In response, he explains that these are from a reporter and head of a hunter recruitment agency who came to him after the test was over, but she states that this is not what she wants to ask. Pointing towards the big box placed beside him, she states that she wants to know what it is. Taking the box, he opens it, remembering Red Butterfly, who apologized to him for the misunderstanding, stating that Hongryon's intention was pure. Remembering Hongrion as the muscular woman in her group, whom he was trying to scare but received an unexpected reaction, Hyunmoo accepted the apology, telling her to forget about it. Giving him the box, Red Butterfly stated that it was the prize for the person who came first in the test, and he is the one who deserves it instead of her. Handing him the box, she requested that he accept it, and that is how he ended up receiving the box. Looking at the tenacious grip gloves placed in the box, he remarks that they look more useful than he thought. Remarking it to be a nice reward, Yoo-min informs him that the new crystal that he brought was sold to Hwaiso again, who seems to be so desperate to buy all of these. Surprised to hear that, Hyunmoo wonders if he buys those for himself and wonders why someone would want a crystal moss so badly, considering that there might be someone acting behind the scenes. Hyunmoo thinks it would be better to directly meet them instead of contacting a middleman like Hwaiso. Remembering their last meeting with Hwaiso, Hyunmoo thinks that he does not seem to be an easy target, while Yoo-min asks if the gloves were the only thing he got as a reward. Realizing that there was prize money in the reward as well, Hyunmoo starts looking inside the box, causing something to fall in his lap and making him confused. Excitedly turning to Yoo-min, he asks if she wants to eat some meat and shows her a check of 5 million won, the prize money he received for getting the first place. Returning home, they get out of the car when Hyunmoo remarks that the association is incredible for giving prizes even in the test, and Yoo-min states that it is their respect for hunters. However, she advises him to be careful, causing him to remark that there is no danger in him spending his own money. Just then, he begins to feel a strange aura and quickly turns around, noticing something. Stopping Yoo-min from entering the house, Hyunmoo tells her to quickly get inside the car, causing her to ask if something is wrong. However, instead of explaining, Hyunmoo urges her to get inside the car, lock it, and not come out until he returns. With that, he starts to walk towards the wall to reach the back side of the house and find spots of blood on the wall, stating that he never expected this. Looking at the two people lying dead on the ground, he turns to the third person sitting on the stairs, asking what they are doing behind someone's house like that. In response, the person who turns out to be Hwaiso greets him and informs him that the people lying on the ground are Japanese who are after the crystal moss that he brings. Stating that there are many other top-ranking hunters who want to know the origin of the crystal moss, Hwaiso remarks that Yoo-min would have been hurt if he had not intervened. Stating that he has a small offer in return for that, Hwaiso expresses his desire for Hyunmoo to make an alliance with the Taesung clan. Realizing that the Taesung clan was behind it all, Hyunmoo smiles and tells him that he has just come back, rejecting their offer. In response, Hwaiso reveals that he has been investigating a lot about him but is unable to find anything, as if someone has erased everything about his identity. Surprised, Hyunmoo stares at him while he continues to state that the crystal moss Hyunmoo brought is only available in high-tier dungeons, and his fighting style also resembles that of people who have spent a lot of time in dungeons. Considering that such a powerful person like him is a mere sewage cleaner, Hwaiso expresses his shock at that and asks him to join them regardless of what agency he is affiliated with. Realizing that he has had a misunderstanding regarding his affiliations, Hyunmoo tries to explain that he is not affiliated with any organization. Considering that Hyunmoo is not going to reply accurately with this approach, Hwaseo decides to use force against him, causing Hyunmoo to become shocked because of his immense power. However, before he can stop him, Hwaseo launches an attack using his stick that he barely manages to defend. Saving himself from the attack, Hyunmoo calls out to him once again, requesting that he listen to what he is trying to say. Frustrated by his attacks, Hyunmoo launches a punch at Hwaseo's face, but he doesn't block it, thinking that his effort to retaliate in such an awkward position would not have much effect. However, as soon as the punch strikes his face, he feels an overwhelming energy, realizing that Hyunmoo possesses the item that was the first-place prize given to Red Butterfly. Meanwhile, Hyunmoo stands at a distance after hitting him, clarifying to him that whatever he did was for self-defense. After standing face-to-face quietly for some time, Hwaseo remarks that Hyunmoo seems to like making difficult decisions, making him confused. Removing his overcoat, Hwaseo opens up his jacket, stating that if Hyunmoo is not ready to listen to him like that, he has no choice but to be rough. With that, he throws the coat in Hyunmoo's direction, which he quickly throws away, telling him not to make him laugh. However, as he removes the coat from his front, he finds Hwaseo unleashing a sword from his cane. Surprised to see the sword, Hyunmoo remarks that it is cheating and quickly activates his battle helper skill, swiftly dodging the attacks. After doing that for some time, Hyunmoo realizes that simply dodging the attacks will not work and leaps up in the air, landing behind Hwaseo. Glad to have finally maintained some distance, Hyunmoo smiles, but Hwaseo quickly reaches near him, launching a close-range attack. Dodging the attack, Hyunmoo quickly grabs him by his clothes and activates his skill of domination. This causes Hwaseo to start hallucinating, which leads him to scream in fear just like Hongrian. After some time, he closes his eyes and falls unconscious, seeing which Hyunmoo starts to drag him away. However, just as Hyunmoo shifts his gaze away from him, Hwaseo quickly opens his eyes and puts his sword to his neck, asking if whatever he saw was an illusionary spell. Shocked, Hyunmoo looks back at him, realizing that he played a trick by pretending to be unconscious. Just then, Hwaseo launches an attack with his sword, causing blood to spurt out of Hyunmoo's body. As he lies on the ground, screaming with pain, Hwaseo states that he did not cut his neck on purpose since he does not intend to kill him. Returning to the investigation, Hwaseo demands to know who Hyunmoo works for. In response, Hyunmoo starts to laugh, causing Hwaseo to ask what is so funny. Calling out to him, Hyunmoo remarks that he has forgotten something, making him confused. Suddenly, he looks at his sword stained with Hyunmoo's blood, which starts to melt. This causes him to realize that Hyunmoo has the skill of poison blood. While Hwaseo is looking at his sword, Hyunmoo gets up and reaches him at great speed, covering Hwaseo's face with his hand and crashing him onto the ground. Forcefully feeding him the poison from his blood, Hyunmoo remarks that he seems to lack poison resistance despite having so much experience. However, just then, Hwaseo launches a punch at Hyunmoo's arm, causing it to break, and kicks him away, freeing himself from Hyunmoo's grasp. The impact of the kick causes Hyunmoo to crash to the ground at a distance. Quickly getting up, Hwaseo takes out a bottle of liquid from his pocket and starts to pour it on his face to mitigate the impact of the poison. Watching that, Hyunmoo remarks that it is good medicine and gets on his feet, asking Hwaseo if he has any left. Seeing him standing completely fine, Hwaseo feels shocked and asks how it can be possible after getting his arms and ribs broken, and he inquires if he has some sort of healing skill. In response, Hyunmoo smiles, remembering his regeneration skill that activates whenever his health falls below a specific percentage, and asks if they should continue the fight. Looking at his sword lying at a distance, Hwaseo contemplates for a while, and then states that this much is enough, making him confused. Getting on his feet, he remarks that he came here to make a deal with him, not to fight, while Hyunmoo reminds him that he was the first one to attack. Getting up, Hwaseo repeats this confusion, stating that he is unaware of who Hyunmoo is affiliated with, causing him to get frustrated by the same remark again and again. Expressing how annoyed he is, Hyunmoo repeats that he is not affiliated with anyone and is alone, causing Hwaseo to ask where he got the crystal moss from. In response, Hyunmoo remarks that it is a business secret, while Hwaseo offers him to join the Taesung clan again, stating that he will get everything he has ever desired. In response, Hyunmoo states that he promised himself never to work under anyone, but that can change if Hwaiso and his people agree to work under him. Hearing Hyunwoo's offer to work under him, Hwaiso remarks that he is talking nonsense at the moment and decides to head back instead of listening to him. As he begins to walk away, Hyunmoo thinks that he wanted to have him due to his connections with people but wasn't aware that he is such a capable ability user. Therefore, he doesn't want to lose such a golden chance. He turns to Hwaiso, asking what is so great about the Taesung clan, mentioning that they are smaller than the Almighty Lotus and their average member is weaker than the Great Unknown. He states that Taesung and Jitae are only media stars and suggests to Hwaiso that he invest in someone younger like him instead. After standing still and quiet for a moment, Hwaiso speaks up, remarking that there are two types of people who preach whatever Hyunmoo just said. Slowly turning around, he remarks that these people are either fools who are unaware of reality or losers who are drowning in their own ambition. Asking if this is really the case, Hyunmoo remarks that it's very rude coming from a person who almost lost to him. Meanwhile, Hwaiso pulls out his sword once again, causing Hyunmoo to remark that he can't go against him with that damaged sword of his. However, without even saying a word, Hwaiso swings the sword at great speed, leaving Hyunmoo stunned. As Hyunmoo gazes at him in surprise, Hwaiso states that if he had come with the intention to kill him, he wouldn't have been able to do anything and inflicts a small cut on Hyunmoo's face. Realizing that the wall behind him has been completely destroyed due to the strike, leaving him unscathed, Hyunmoo becomes amazed at Hwaiso's ability. While he looks at the wall with surprise, Hwaiso continues to state that there are many people in their clan stronger than him, and on top of all this stands Lee Jitae, asking if he understands. Considering someone who isn't even at the 10th level saying something like that, Hwaiso remarks that it doesn't even seem funny. Hearing all that, Hyunmoo turns to him, asking what is so impressive about Lee Jitae, which makes him confused. Charging his body with overwhelming energy, Hyunmoo states that he will prove to them that he is much stronger than Lee Jitae. However, he wants to know how much stronger he needs to become equal to Lee Jitae. Reaching for his overcoat, Hwaiso states that Jitae reached level 20 in less than half a year after becoming a hunter. This is the reason he considers Jitae to have the support of a group like Taesung. Clarifying that if it were an ordinary person, it would have taken them over a year to reach that level, he remarks that if Hyunmoo wants to prove he's different from others, he should at least attain that level. Hearing that, Hyunmoo declares that he will be able to do that in 2 weeks. With that, he enters Hell with the motive to quickly increase his level and starts killing the monsters with his bare hands. For the ones he can't kill with punches, he lets them bite his hands and arms, causing them to die from the poison in his blood. After killing countless monsters like that, his level rises to 15, giving him a notification that the conquering star Arden is looking after him. Reading it, he starts to look around, feeling a lot of pain in his hand due to the goblin's bite, and sits down to heal his wound. Tying up his wound with a piece of cloth, he remarks that he shouldn't have pushed his body too hard like that. While saying that, he suddenly hears a voice and becomes startled to find Rainian beside him, stating that fairies are scared of fighting, but he decided to continue that without permission. Looking at her, Hyunmoo asks where she has been all that time while she puts her needle-like wand in his hand by pressure and starts to suck up his blood. While feeling frustrated, he thinks that this isn't much of a problem since he can revive in this place even after dying and wonders if he can revive in reality as well. However, looking at the piles of dead monsters he killed, he thinks that killing all of them has greatly improved his skills and level. However, remembering the red-capped goblin he met in this place, he realizes that such a monster is still a big problem for him. He remembers that he hasn't been able to find that goblin, even after killing many of them. While he's thinking about that monster, considering it the strongest among those he has met so far, the same goblin appears behind him. Feeling the presence, Hyunmoo quickly turns around to find the goblin with his severed arm replaced by a hook. However, before the monster can notice him, he quickly backs away, telling Rainian to go somewhere and hide, while the goblin goes near the pile of dead monsters, feeling remorseful. After looking at the goblin, he turns back to Rainian, realizing that she has already gone away, while the goblin starts to shake in anger and lets out a cry. Wondering what it is looking at, Hyunmoo takes out the hell darts, stating that he never expected the monsters to get sad if their own kind is killed. Pointing the darts towards the goblin, Hyunmoo challenges it to come and fight him instead of wasting his time. Noticing him, the eyes of the goblin start to glow with fierce intent, and it charges at him with great speed, intent on killing him. After a relentless battle with the goblin, Hyunmoo gets defeated and dies, receiving a notification that the next quest is about to begin and requesting that he quickly gets rid of the goblin. Reviving in a new location, Hyunmoo feels amazed by the goblin's power, thinking that he angered the goblin to a great extent by killing its fellows, which led to his own death. After lying on the ground for a while, he gathers his resolve, affirming that it is merely a goblin he can ultimately defeat. While he is engrossed in crafting a strategy to lure the goblin into a trap and finish it with poison, the goblin approaches him stealthily, launching an unexpected attack. This results in his immediate death without being able to defend himself. After facing death again and again, he finally steps onto a wooden bridge, striving to complete the quest on his sixth try. Yet, before he can formulate a plan, the goblin reappears, prompting him to speculate whether this is a response to its companion's deaths, and starts to run. As the goblin charges, its fierce intent evident in its eyes, Hyunmoo stops to confront it, stating that they were the ones who started the fight. After successfully blocking some of its attacks, Hyunmoo becomes a little confident, stating that he just needs to counter the attacks. However, at that moment, the goblin unveils a concealed weapon, slashing it through his body, causing blood to spurt out once again. Coughing blood, Hyunmoo realizes his inadequacy against this formidable foe and wonders if he should just hide after reviving. Remembering an old saying that forgiveness is the true victory and revenge only leads to more revenge, Hyunmoo decides to forget about this goblin and focus on leveling up instead. However, considering that he cannot run away like that, Hyunmoo decides to not let anyone get away with anything or regret the actions he takes. Remembering the countless times he was killed by the goblin, he decides to make the backstabbers pay for their actions since his pride cannot allow him to run away from danger. After a few days, the goblin walks around in the area holding his weapon, thinking that he has not seen Hyunmoo for a lot of days and wonders if he has finally run away. However, the goblin considers it too early to relax, thinking that Hyunmoo has the power to revive and is a silly one to deal with. Thinking that it cannot allow him to reach up to them at any cost, the goblin keeps on looking for him when another of his kind comes to him from behind. Calling out to Kurson, the reed goblin, the other goblin is about to inform him about something when Kurson remarks that it should not have come out. In response, the goblin reveals that the others of their kind are all dying, revealing that someone has put poison in their drinking water and asking him to come back. Reaching back at their dwelling place, Kieran finds all the goblins to be in a critical condition and goes to the pond, fighting all the fish inside it dead. While he feels enraged at that, the other goblin asks who can do something that cruel, finding that the humans can easily kill them in other ways and have no reason for doing that. However, Kurson realizes that the only one capable of doing something like that is Hyunmoo, and he wonders how he found out about this place. While he is thinking about that, another goblin calls out to him from behind, apologizing for disturbing him, and asks if Kurson can take a look at the little child it is holding. Looking at the child crying in its arms, the goblin states that it has been looking for Kurson for a long time, causing Kurson's eyes to fill up with tears at watching his child in such a state. Overwhelmed with anger, Kurson starts to walk away while the rest of the goblins stop him, asking what he is trying to do against an enemy that can revive himself. They state that all they can do is give up on their revenge so that Hyunmoo stops bothering them. They suggest to Kurson that they simply run away and find a new place before things get worse, but Kurson takes out his sword and raises it up in the air. Watching that, the other goblins ask if they are whispering to him, and Kurson agrees. Hearing that, they remark that they have no other choice left in that case. Just then they find the dead body of one of their scouts who went out a while ago, remarking that it was a very cruel act to kill them like that. Looking at its wounds, Kurson remarks that he can smell the poison, which strengthens his belief that Hyunmoo is the one doing all this through his poisonous traps. Calling all his scouts back, Kurson states that Hyunmoo is intentionally leaving his hints like that, which means that he is trying to lure them away from everyone else. He orders them all to prepare themselves in case of a surprise attack while they ask him to come back, stating that they will not be able to do anything without him. However, he considers it better for him to stay there and chase Hyunmoo, thinking that although Hyunmoo's growth is fast, he is still much weaker than him. Stating that he has memorized all of Hyunwoo's movements and ways while fighting against him, Kurson assures them that it will be easy for him to kill Hyunmoo alone. Understanding whatever he said, the goblins tell him to take care of him, considering that Hyunmoo has the ability to revive himself, and Kurson tells them not to worry too much, stating that he will make sure to come back alive. Kurson leaves the place and goes out in search of Hyunmoo. While walking around, he suddenly feels a presence and quickly turns around, blocking the dart coming at him with his hook. Looking at Hyunmoo standing behind him, he vows to give him a painful death. In response, Hyunmoo states that he will give him a chance to die from his hands and gets ready to fight. Listening to Hyunwoo's remark about giving him a chance to die at his hands, Kurson becomes confused and asks what he means by that. He inquires if Hyunmoo simply wants to buy some time, while Hyunmoo tells him to think carefully. Hyunmoo states that if he really wanted to use poison to kill everyone, they would not have survived. He tells Kurson to take it as a threat, emphasizing that the death toll can rise further the next time, which causes Kurson to feel enraged. Hyunmoo reminds Kurson that he can come back to life no matter how many times they kill him, but nothing like that will happen if Kurson dies. In response, Kurson takes out his weapon and states that he only needs to take Hyunmoo back alive, planning to chop his limbs off to ensure he regrets his actions. However, before he can launch an attack, Hyunmoo tightly holds his weapon and mentions that he can still come back to life by killing himself. With a cruel smile on his face, Hyunmoo states that he can threaten Kurson's family, but Kurson can do nothing to stop him. He explains that all he wants is revenge and has no intention of killing Kurson's innocent family. However, if Kurson keeps attacking him, Hyunmoo warns that he cannot guarantee the safety of his family, leaving him shocked and frustrated. After contemplating a bit, Kurson drops his sword, asking if his life is the only thing he wants, and he agrees, stating that there was no need to waste that much time despite knowing that. Telling him to keep his side of the deal, Kurson asks Hyunmoo to leave this place after killing him instead of harming his people. In response, Hyunmoo reaches for the sword, remarking that if they had talked instead of fighting before, it would not have happened. Taking advantage of Hyunmoo leaning down to pick up the sword, Kurson tricks him and launches a forceful kick, sending Hyunmoo crashing to the ground. Realizing it was a trap, Hyunmoo quickly gets up, only to find Kurson leaping into the air and preparing to attack. Despite launching the attack, Kurson realizes that Hyunmoo has managed to block it and starts venting his anger, asking how Hyunmoo expected him to believe whatever he said. Stating that he is not a fool to believe Hyunmoo's words, Kurson keeps launching attacks, causing blood to flow out of his body, stating that he will make his death much more painful. In response, Hyunmoo laughs, calling Kurson a fool, and remarks that he should have killed him instantly instead of doing that when his health falls below 10%. This triggers Hyunmoo's automatic regeneration, allowing him to launch a powerful counterattack with a forceful punch that weakens Kurson's grip. Quickly getting up, he grabs Kurson by the neck and starts to launch continuous punches, causing him to crash into the opposite wall. Looking at him, Hyunmoo states that he was intentionally holding back and even gave him a chance to save his people, causing Kurson to become frustrated. However, before he can react, Hyunmoo reaches near him at great speed and launches a forceful punch in his stomach, causing him to experience intense pain. While getting attacked continuously, Kurson thinks about how Hyunmoo is healing so quickly despite getting badly injured and wonders if he is hiding a skill. Meanwhile, Hyunmoo keeps on launching powerful punches, leaving Kurson unable to even retaliate and only wondering the reason for his strength. After becoming badly injured, Kurson crashes to the ground, realizing that he is fated to be defeated, while Hyunmoo explains that he was just careless enough to underestimate his abilities. Hyunmoo states that since Kurson has been killing him with a single strike this entire time, they have never actually fought even a single time. Hyunmoo highlights that Kurson's pride and confidence about being able to kill him wherever and whenever he wants were his biggest faults. In response, Kurson tells him to stop being cocky, remarking that he can take care of a human like him if he is able to stand up. Hearing that, Hyunmoo steps back, giving him a chance to get on his feet and attack. Yet as he tries to do that, Hyunmoo launches another strike, causing him to crash to the ground again. Looking at him, Hyunmoo remarks that it is too late for him to try to kill him. Taking out a dart, Hyunmoo remarks that he has no intention to be careless like Kurson. Realizing his intention, Kurson implores him to stop and accepts his defeat, apologizing for killing him all that time and asking him to listen to him. He reveals that the goblins that were not able to be blessed cannot live there, and if he dies, his entire community will also face death. Kurson reminds him that he promised not to harm his innocent family. However, in response, Hyunmoo smiles, asking if his entire community is really going to die as a result of his death, and he agrees, expecting him to show some mercy. Yet, to his disappointment, Hyunmoo remarks that he might be able to get more experience points at their deaths if he simply kills Kurson and starts to put his poisoned blood on the dark. Watching that, Kurson becomes shocked, but before he can react, Hyunmoo pierces the dart into his body, causing him to die of poison. At the top of a colossal tower, Hyunmoo stands, overlooking the vast expanse of hell, and takes a deep breath, remarking that he has finally completed the quest. As a result of slaying the formidable red-capped goblin, his level increases threefold, leaving him surprised. As a result of successfully completing the quest, he is given a break for 21 days before the next quest begins. While he is engrossed in searching for the goblin's remains, Rainian arrives from behind, inquiring if the battle is over. He agrees, noting that she can feast on the monster once he finishes inspecting it. Expressing his desire to uncover the source of Kurson's strength, Hyunmoo examines his sword, remarking that his physical capabilities were too great for him to be reliant on just a weapon. However, as he looks closely, he finds something important on the monster's hand and looks at it, wondering if it is writing. Suddenly, the words intricately written on his hands start to float up in the air and form a ball, causing Hyunmoo to wonder if the quest was not over yet. Abruptly, the ball transforms into robust rods that pierce through Hyunmoo's hand, leaving him shocked. As he examines his hand closely, he notices the symbol etched on his palm becoming even more intricate. A notification then informs him that he has absorbed a fragment of the shattering star, Gaul, coupled with the acquisition of another legendary skill, which leaves him utterly astonished. After some time, Yumin is deeply asleep in her room when a voice calls out to her. Startled, she opens her eyes and finds Hyunmoo standing behind her, asking why she is so surprised. Without responding, she puts on her glasses, asking if he has eaten something, and gets down on the bed, stating that there is nothing much to eat in her house. Without turning to him, she starts to walk away, stating that she will go to the convenience store and bring something to it, making him confused. However, before she can go away, Hyunmoo stops her, intending to say something, and contemplates whether he should tell her the truth. Meanwhile, she reveals that Hweso came to her house and asked if there was anything wrong with him, and she replied that he was not at home while wondering why Hweso would ask her such a thing. Stating that it did not seem to be about the crystal moss, she inquires if something happened to him while he was gone, stating that she is totally unaware of what is happening. Frustrated by his suspicious behavior, she demands to know what occurred when she wasn't with him and what secrets he is hiding from her. Angrily, she questions why he keeps disappearing and reappearing, stating that she feels very uneasy at the fact that he never explains his plans and actions. In response, Hyunmoo urges her to calm down, promising to explain everything, causing her to calm down a little. He acknowledges the fact that Yumin was definitely involved in whatever was going on and supported him fully, keeping her own duties aside. Therefore, he considers it bad for someone like her to get stressed. He realizes that his act of receiving help from her wherever he needed has made him totally reliant on her. Therefore, considering that betraying her by keeping secrets from her will leave him alone in this world, he decides to tell her everything. Having decided that, he turns to her, reminding her of the return stone he showed her, and reveals that it takes him to a dungeon called Hell, causing her to realize why he keeps disappearing and reappearing. He explains that it is harder for him to figure out how long it takes for him to return. Hearing that, Yumin asks if it is also possible that he never returns in the future. However, he assures her that no matter how much time it takes, he will surely come back and wants her to become a lighthouse for him, causing her to feel surprised. The next day, he goes out to meet Hweso, considering that he has completed the challenge by leveling up within 2 weeks and should tell him about that. While he stands outside the building waiting for him, Hweso arrives in his car and gives him a ride. As he sits in the car, Hweso expresses his astonishment at him becoming a level 20 from level 7 in just 2 weeks and states that it is hard for him to believe, causing Hyunmoo to feel frustrated. Waiso remarks that there is no way for them to check if he is really at level 20, causing Hyunmoo to ask about their deal in that case. Stating that he did not promise anything back then, Waiso says that in light of his efforts, the only thing he can do is stop convincing him to join their clan. Along with that, he offers to increase the price of the crystal moss by 15%, causing Hyunmoo to state that he wants him to double the price if that is the case. Hearing that, Waiso inquires if he is doing it on purpose, but he replies that he will increase the price further if Waiso keeps on saying that since he did so much to satisfy their requirements. In response, Waiso charges his body with overwhelming energy and remarks that nothing seems to have changed despite the work he has put in. Hearing that, Hyunmoo smiles, asking if getting angry can solve all his issues. Saying that, he starts to summon something in his hand, causing a bright light to emerge from the car. As Waiso keeps staring at him, Hyunmoo finally summons a large piece of crystal moss in his hand and asks if Waiso knows what a monopoly is. Stating that there is no one except him who can bring such pure crystal moss, Hyunmoo repeats that he has a monopoly on it and can even change his mind if Waiso keeps the rude behavior. In response, Waiso remarks that he is already matching the price of the highest quality crystal moss found in a 5-star dungeon and is offering 15% more than that, which is too much. Hearing that, Hyunmoo replies that it would be difficult for him to sell this crystal moss to them in that case, causing Waiso to feel enraged. Taking something in his hand, Hyunmoo throws it towards Waiso, stating that he will give him something interesting, and Waiso catches it in anger. Looking at him, Waiso asks what it is, while Hyunmoo tells him to see himself, remarking that it isn't something much special. Turning to his hand, Waiso opens it up, finding an item inside that leaves him shocked, while Hyunmoo calls it just a little deposit. In his hand, Waiso finds a legendary ring called Trust of Urhast that doubles the senses of its owner. Closely looking at it with surprise, Waiso asks if it is a legendary item, and Hyunmoo agrees, stating that someone as experienced as Waiso can recognize its worth quickly. Explaining the powers of the item, Hyunmoo remarks that even Lee Jitae would never have given such a valuable present to him and repeats that he is more useful than Lee Jitae. While Hyunmoo tells him to keep it in order to understand his true worth, Waiso looks at the ring again, thinking that it is undoubtedly a legendary item. However, realizing something, he quickly turns to Hyunmoo, stating that there must be another ring that matches it and asking if Hyunmoo happens to have that as well. In response, Hyunmoo tells him that it was the only one he found, and he puts the ring in his pocket, stating that they will eventually find its pair sometime in the future. Finally accepting Hyunmoo's money demand, Waiso promises to pay him double the original price, causing him to smile in response. He states that he will help Hyunmoo avoid the National Tax Service, causing him to think that he does everything to ensure that the other person is satisfied. This is the reason why Hyunmoo wants to have him by his side. Looking at his hand in his pocket, he smiles, remembering that the second ring which he possesses can track the owner of the other part and make them obedient by lowering their actual experience. Meanwhile, Waiso asks if there is anything else that Hyunmoo wants. After thinking a little, Hyunmoo points at the car, stating that he wants it, and asks what its model is. Meanwhile, Yumin, who is at her school, receives a call from Hyunmoo and tells him that she is currently very busy. However, he still asks her to come out, causing her to become annoyed at him, disturbing her during her work. However, as she angrily comes out, she finds Hyunmoo standing beside an expensive car with a lot of people looking at him in astonishment. Looking at the car, Yumin inquires where he got it from, and he tells her that he got it from Waiso, asking if she wants to ride in it. Astonished, she asks if he drove the car all the way there by himself, and he agrees, stating that it was not much of a challenge for him. However, instead of feeling pleased, she starts to feel angry, remarking that he does not even have a license and drives the car home by herself while scolding him throughout the way. The next day, in a training facility, Waiso spars with Hyunmoo in order to check his physical capability. During the sparring session, Waiso remarks that the clan is not just an organization of ability users, but a place for hunters to train and prepare their bodies for the dungeon. He explains that everything from housing to training benefits to health services and other legal affairs is at the whim for hunters. While continuously hitting Hyunmoo, Waiso gives him the analogy that every hunter is like a small company. Among them, he reveals Taesung to be having the greatest benefits in the entire world, and not joining it despite getting a chance is a huge loss in his sight. However, even after listening to such a persuasive talk, Hyunmoo insists that he will not be joining the clan and tries to launch a punch at Hwaiso, which he effortlessly dodges. Leaning down, he launches the quick counterattack by punching at Hyunmoo's stomach, which causes him to crash to the ground in intense pain. Seeing him, Hwaiso remarks that his reaction time is fast, stating that he wanted to see his regeneration ability but was unable to. In response, Hyunmoo smiles, stating that although he has a fracture in his ribs, he has lasted for quite some time without utilizing his skills. Hearing that, Hwaiso becomes frustrated and gets ready to start a fierce fight, stating that he will have to fight more in order to see what he claims. Before starting the fight, Hwaiso asks if he plans to go to the Great Unknown Clan, if not Taezong. In response, Hyunmoo remarks that it is a very shady place, to which Hwaiso agrees. He reveals that the only known information about their leader is his name, and no one knows about their association or their members. While continuing the fight, Hyunmoo remarks that despite all these facts, the members of that clan are very humble and welcoming to others, saying that he suddenly gets a chance to attack and tries to launch a forceful punch, which Hwaiso effortlessly blocks and twists his arm, causing him to feel intense pain. As a result of his health dropping below 10%, his regeneration ability is automatically activated, causing his arm to heal while Hwaiso curiously notices it. After the regeneration process is complete, Hyunmoo sits on the ground, asking if Hwaiso is satisfied. In response, Hwaiso remarks that he is excited to see what may happen based on his growth within the last 2 weeks and asks why Hyunmoo called him there. Hyunmoo replies that he only called him to return his car and changes the topic, asking if Hwaiso has ever heard about the stars, making him confused. After thinking a bit, Hwaiso asks if he is referring to the class system of ability users, but he disagrees, stating that he is talking about the Shattering Star, the Wailing Star, and others like that. In response, Hwaiso reveals that he has heard about them from the top rankers, including Lee Jitae, and states that it is something that only a chosen few know about. Hwaiso tells him about a Chinese top ranker who told about a group called 5-Star Association that made a dungeon and an association that uses the Star of Bethlehem as their symbol. Confused, Hyunmoo asks what he is talking about, while Hwaiso tells him to find out more about it by himself and asks if he wants to clear a dungeon. Hearing about clearing a dungeon, Hyunmoo becomes confused, asking why Hwaiso is saying such a thing all of a sudden. In response, Hwaiso states that if he does not want to work under anyone and wants to rise to the top like Lee Jitae, attracting people towards him can help him with that. He considers it important for Hyunmoo to socialize with others, which causes him to contemplate a little. Hwaiso explains that there is no record of him training in a dungeon despite his skills, which will make it difficult for him to rise further, causing him to be seen as only a hunter with no experience. After thinking deeply about that for a moment, Hyunmoo turns to him and asks what he wants him to do, and he repeats his suggestion, stating that he needs to go to a dungeon. Remarking that even a genius needs to learn the basics, Hwaiso says that he will help prepare everything, and Hyunmoo only needs to get ready and go where he tells. Telling him to wait for his call, Hwaiso leaves. Following his suggestion, Hyunmoo waits for the preparations to be made and then arrives at Cheongyi Mountain. It is a permanent 1-star dungeon where the people who just became hunters can test their abilities, while normal citizens come there to hike and enjoy the scenery. While he is thinking about that, a girl holding a bodhran arrives and makes everyone attentive, causing Hyunmoo to become startled by its loud and annoying sound. Calling all the registered ability users to her, she starts to arrange them by giving them different numbers. After arranging everyone, she introduces herself as No Howl, an overseer from the Great Unknown Clan. Her breath, reeking of alcohol, causes everyone to feel disgusted. Coming near, she states that they must be confused about why an overseer is assigned to them and remarks that there are many newbies who start fighting with their fellows within the dungeon. While she goes on to explain the different problems that the newbies as well as the administration face, Hyunmoo starts to feel extremely frustrated, waiting for her speech to end. Finally, at the end of a long debate, she states that a middle-rank hunter from each clan will be following the newbies in order to guide them and prevent any accidents. However, she states that if they avoid fighting, they can go in alone, and she will have no issues with that. After that, she goes on to explain the basic knowledge of dungeons, revealing the different ranks dungeons have and the types of dungeons that exist. She reveals that there are mobile-type dungeons that have terrain that continues to change, making them harder and more unpredictable. In contrast, there are permanent-type dungeons, which have a set terrain, making them much easier to complete as compared to the other types. Remarking that the dungeon they are about to enter is a permanent-type dungeon, Howl states that it is very easy for them to clear, but since it is their first time, she will help them out, while explaining that she suddenly starts throwing up, causing the newbies to feel disgusted. Apologizing for that, she states that she was out late last night. Pointing her stick at one of them standing at the very left, she asks them to introduce themselves one by one. Complying, all of them start introducing themselves along with their ranks, with the highest among them being 2. After hearing about the particulars of all of them, Hyunmoo introduces himself, revealing his rank to be 1, like all others. Hearing that, Howl starts to walk towards him and observes him closely for some time, causing him and all others to become confused. Looking at the weapons hidden under her jacket, Hyunmoo becomes anxious and allows her to observe. Suddenly, she points her stick towards him, asking if he is from Sangi Elementary, and he disagrees. Hearing that, she starts taking the names of certain other institutions and asking if he belongs to one of them, but he clarifies that he does not. Hearing that, she starts to contemplate where he can be from, causing him to become confused. After some time, she turns to him, stating that it is not very important, and asks if he has brought his equipment along, and he agrees, summoning a wooden stick from his inventory. Watching that, Hull remarks that he has a very interesting talent, causing the other newbies to feel jealous. However, she remarks that taking a stick as a weapon is strange, while Hyunmoo explains that it is not an ordinary stick, but the one that causes the items a monster has to drop when beaten. Hearing that, Park Seo-moon, one of the newbies who seems very jealous, comes to them, asking if he is joking. Removing his backpack, he remarks that it is insane for him to carry only a stick and asks how he is going to kill monsters with that. Opening his backpack, he reveals numerous weapons of different types he possesses, stating that he should have carried at least this much with him while coming to a dungeon. Taking one of the swords from the bag, he points it towards Hyunmoo, stating that he should have bought some of them because of their immense value. However, before he can speak any further, Howl rushes at him with great speed and holds his leg, causing him to crash to the ground. Catching his sword, she pierces it into the ground right beside him, causing him to tremble in fear. Sitting near him, Howl asks if he is crazy, stating that showing one's weapons outside a dungeon is strictly prohibited since it can cause fear and anxiety among normal citizens. In response, Seo-moon, who is still trembling in fear, apologizes to her, and she helps him get up, telling him to be careful. Turning to the other newbies, she states that they will be entering the dungeon, while Hyunmoo watches her from a distance, realizing that this is the power of a middle-class hunter from a large clan. Thinking that she is incredibly strong, Hyunmoo considers it best to test her abilities and smiles. With that, he starts walking towards the entrance in order to join all others when a monster suddenly appears behind him without him noticing. Following Howl, they walk through a heavily guarded place, reaching near the entrance of the one-star dungeon. As they enter the place, the doors behind them are closed, making them all a little nervous, while Howl turns to them and states that they should head in now. After they enter the dungeon, they find themselves in a place filled with strong vines and a creepy atmosphere. Howl reveals that it is a dungeon that does not resemble a jungle but is filled with countless goblins, which keep appearing the more they proceed. Turning to the group of newbies, she asks if anyone among them knows how to clear a dungeon. In response, Seo-moon raises his hand, stating that they need to obtain the return crystal for it. Agreeing to that, Howl tells them that when they start confronting the goblins, they will reach a cave where they will be able to find the return crystal, which is the first clear condition. Hearing that, Hyunmoo thinks that the process of clearing the dungeon seems similar to that of leaving Hell after completing the quest. Meanwhile, Howl guides them further and states that she will not be helping them unless the situation becomes dangerous and will be simply watching them from behind. After that, she tells them to go ahead and start with the clearing mission. Taking charge, Seo-moon tells all the group members to gather around him, stating that they will start by assigning roles. However, before doing that, he reveals that the goblins have a sensitive sense of smell, due to which they need to get some grass to hide their own scent. He also guides them to take special care of their heads during sneak attacks, causing Hyunmoo to become confused by his logic. Calling out to him, Hyunmoo asks why they need to do that, stating that it seems very weird. Walking towards him, Seo-moon states that it is not weird and is something that he has learned from the famous hunter streamer Wild Breath from his channel. Annoyed by Hyunmoo's questions, Seo-moon remarks that he does not even have the right weapon, yet he is interfering again and again while Howl stops them from arguing. Turning to Hyunmoo, she tells him to stop talking back and cooperate with others instead, asking what he felt to be so weird. In response, Hyunmoo asks why they need to use grass, stating that if goblins have a sensitive sense of smell, they would be able to differentiate between fresh grass and ripped grass. Adding on, he states that the body part they need to worry about is not the head but the ankle since, in a dense forest, short-heighted goblins can never try to attack them from above. Annoyed by his response, Seo-moon tries to attack him. Howl intervenes, stating that in her view, what Seo-moon suggested was more appropriate, causing him to feel proud. However, she continues to state that it would have been appropriate if it were 10 years ago, causing him to feel disappointed. She explains that the hunter Seo-moon was talking about cleared a 1-star dungeon a long time ago, while such tips change with time. In contrast, she considers Hyunmoo's suggestion to be more appropriate and turns to him, expressing her confusion about whether such knowledge can be acquired without experience. She remarks that it seems like Hyunmoo has been hunting countless goblins in the past. In response, Hyunmoo simply smiles, stating that he only happened to do his homework, causing her to give a suspicious gaze. He clarifies that this is the first time he has ever entered a dungeon and has no experience with killing goblins, remarking that it is something illegal. Hearing that, Seo-moon laughs, stating that he has searched for such things on the internet just like him. Just then they hear a sound and quickly turn around, finding something rushing towards them at a great speed. Reaching near them, the creature that turns out to be a tiny goblin leaps up to attack them with its small dagger. While the rest of them are contemplating how to deal with such a swift attack, Hyunmoo kicks the goblin with a lot of force, causing it to go flying backwards. Watching that, Seo-moon and the rest of their team members feel utterly shocked while Hyunmoo turns to them, asking what they would say about his weapon. Watching him quietly for a moment, Howl comes to him, stating that he will end up fighting with others if he continues to exhibit that behavior. Therefore, she tells them to stop their arguments for that time and start their mission of clearing the dungeon. After some time, they start facing more goblins and tirelessly fighting against them with their weapons without a single trace of fear on their faces. Watching them slay the goblins endlessly, Howl feels surprised, thinking that they are doing a very good job without getting scared while they all gather in one place to take a short break. She thinks that if they continue like that, they will clear the dungeon in no time without receiving any fatal wounds. However, looking around, she feels something strange. She remembers that even before they started to fight, the goblins seemed scared, which is quite an unusual reaction for such a monster to give in front of newbie hunters. Therefore, she decides to look into it herself. After sending them back, just then, she notices something and goes to the group of newbies, asking what the matter is. In response, one of them, with fear evident on her face, tells her to look in a certain direction, which makes her feel shocked. In front of them are countless dead goblins tied to the poles, causing them to wonder if it is something normal. While the group members keep contemplating how it happened when they did not even come in that direction, Howl's expressions change. Calling it an emergency situation, she states that they will return as soon as they see the return stone, instructing them to stay close to her. She thinks that massacring the goblins and playing with their bodies is not something that can happen in a 1-star dungeon. This makes her realize that whatever creature has done that, it must be a very dangerous one, and she concludes that it is necessary for them to leave before they get hurt. Suddenly they realize that Hyunmoo is not with them, which makes Howl worried. In an effort to locate him, she starts to run here and there, calling out to him when a red-capped goblin suddenly appears with fierce intent in its eyes. 1 hour ago, while all the members of the group were busy killing the goblins observed by Howl, Hyunmoo stood back, watching them. Feeling disappointed, he remarks that this does not even look close to hell, thinking of their weapons as being of poor quality and having no real sense of strategy. Looking at the calm expression of the overseer, he understands why she is standing like that. Deciding to go and start hunting himself, he leaves the place without Howl even noticing. After reaching deep inside the forest, he activates his newly obtained legendary skill in order to try it out. This causes Kurson to appear before him as his summons. Looking at him, Hyunmoo smiles, giving him his first job. Looking at his palm, he remembers that this is the skill he learned after defeating Kurson in Hell, which allows him to bring his dead targets back and use them as his underlings. Considering it to be an incredible skill, Hyunmoo gives Kurson the job of killing all the monsters present in the dungeon, making him confused. Hyunmoo explains that he is talking about the goblins, which causes Kurson to become angry, remarking that he wants him to kill his own kind. In response, Hyunmoo gives a cruel smile, stating that if he does not follow his orders, all his tribe will be killed, causing Kurson to become frustrated. While they are talking, a goblin suddenly appears from behind, and Hyunmoo repeats his order, telling him to kill all of them. After hesitating for a moment, Kurson walks towards the goblin, causing Hyunmoo to have a strange feeling. He realizes that it is because of his family skill that he has begun to share the same emotions as Kurson that he feels this way. As he keeps watching Kurson stand near the goblin, he thinks that Kurson's uncomfortable and disgusting emotion suggests that he is trying to deny something. Meanwhile, Kurson raises his hook in the air, considering that although the creature in front of him is a goblin, it cannot speak and does not even have a weapon. Slashing it with his hook, Kurson tries to justify his act, stating that its appearance doesn't seem to be similar to his, which shows that they are not of the same kind. Telling himself that these creatures are not goblins but something else, Kurson keeps killing them endlessly while Hyunmoo watches him and smiles, remarking that his behavior is hatred. He knows that Kurson does not want to believe that something as weak as these goblins can be the same species as him. Meanwhile, the goblins feel shocked to see a creature similar to them, killing them, wondering how it could be possible. However, Kurson, who seems to be filled with rage, vows to end their existence completely and keeps slaying them ruthlessly. After observing him for some time, Hyunmoo turns around to leave, stating that he will be back within a few moments. Meanwhile, Howl, who keeps calling Hyunmoo, doesn't get a reply and thinks that he might have died already and that making this much noise can be dangerous for the rest of them. However, just then Hyunmoo appears from the bushes and calls out to them. Seeing him, she starts to scold him for acting on his own without permission. After coming to her senses, she holds her head, asking if he is all right, and he agrees, asking why they all look tired. Stating that she will be explaining the details later, she instructs him to stay close to her, saying that they will return as soon as they find the return stone. Just then, one of them points to a stone nearby with a strange symbol on it, asking if it is the return stone. Watching that, she feels relieved, stating that they can finally use the stone in return, causing Hyunmoo to feel surprised. However, before any one of them can move, Seo-moon starts to run towards the stone while all of them call out to him, trying to stop him considering that it can be dangerous. However, ignoring their calls, Seo-moon keeps running ahead, thinking that he must leave the place as soon as possible. Remembering Howl's reaction and the dead bodies of the goblins that they saw, he thinks that staying there any longer would be much more dangerous. Therefore, he keeps running towards the stone when his leg suddenly strikes a hook, causing him to crash to the ground. Following that, Kurson appears in front of them. Watching him, Seo-moon starts to tremble in fear when Kurson raises his hook up in the air, intending to kill him. Seeing that, Howl runs towards them in order to save Seo-moon, who covers his eyes, thinking that it is the end for him. However, before Kurson can attack, Howl reaches near them and takes out her weapons, launching countless swift strikes, leaving her group members surprised by her power. Meanwhile, Hyunmoo watches the fight with nervousness while Howl lands behind Kurson, causing him to turn around and draw out his sword in anger. Swinging his sword in the air, he launches a precise strike on her arm, causing it to get injured. Watching that, Hyunmoo thinks that she is no match for a goblin who came from hell, and after staying motionless for some time, both Kurson and Howl rush towards each other and start a relentless fight once again. Watching that, Hyunmoo thinks that the skill he is using allows him to give orders to those bound by it. However, there is also a disadvantage associated with it, which is the fact that if the target is of a higher level, then the owner will have limited control over it. However, considering that his own death will lead to the death of Kurson, which will eventually destroy his tribe, Hyunmoo is easily able to overcome that disadvantage. Looking at the dead bodies of goblins lying in their surroundings, Hyunmoo realizes that their condition not only expresses Kurson's disgust towards such weak creatures, but also his own pain. Looking at the newbies standing at a distance, he considers it a plus point that they are not helping the overseer, making her the only problem. Considering that she is a mid-level fighter from the Great Unknown Clan, Hyunmoo wonders if she will be able to fight and win against Kursin, who is at level 26. Meanwhile, Kursin and Howl continue the relentless fight, with both of them showing an equal amount of power. Considering that it would not be easy to overpower her, Kursin dodges her attacks and starts running towards the newbies standing at a distance. Seeing that, she quickly turns to him, telling him to stop and fight with her, but Kursin keeps running ahead and stops at a distance, leaping up in the air, leaving her shocked. Taking a backflip in the air, Kursin reaches back to her and launches a surprise attack, causing blood to spurt out of her body. As he lands back on the ground, she wonders how something that powerful can be in a one-star dungeon. She realizes that Kursin is not an ordinary monster, but has better gear than most hunters and is extremely meticulous and sly with his moves. However, thinking that a mere goblin was able to hurt her like that, she feels enraged and turns around with blood dripping down her face. Activating her skill of Accelerate, she suddenly disappears, leaving Kursin, Hyunmoo, and all others shocked. Considering that the fight is getting dangerous, Hyunmoo commands Kursin to get away from the place as soon as possible. Complying, Kursin starts to run away, but before he can do that, Howl appears in front of him out of nowhere and launches a fatal attack. Watching that, Hyunmoo becomes shocked while Kursin stands still, looking at the deep cuts on his body and the pool of blood beneath his feet. Meanwhile, Howl utilizes her skill of Accelerate once again and disappears, thinking that this is a skill that accelerates the movements of the user by twice the amount for a short period of time. However, considering that the monster might harm other people during the skill duration, she decides to hurry up and quickly finish the battle. Therefore, she appears above Kursin once again, vowing to finish it this time, and rushes towards him to launch a final attack. However, before she can do that, Kursin reaches for his bag and takes out a smoke bomb, causing a blast of smoke to erupt, making everything invisible. Coming out of the smoke, she becomes visible and settles on a stone, thinking about how a goblin can carry smoke bombs and wondering if it is really a goblin in the first place. Just then, she hears the voice and quickly turns around to find Kursin holding Seo Moon, placing the sword on his neck and forbidding her to make a move if she wants him to remain alive. Realizing that he is using the strategy of keeping a hostage, along with the fact that he is speaking in human language, Howl becomes shocked. She considers it impossible for a monster to be this intelligent and even able to talk. She thinks it would be better to assess the situation first, but wonders how to do that considering if she should prioritize their safety or call for backup. Considering that losing to the monster can lead him to face something even scarier, she keeps contemplating, struggling to make a decision while Hyunmoo watches her with curiosity. After some time, she calls out to Seo Moon, stating that it is his right to not forgive her for her actions, and holds her weapons tightly, making him confused. Just then, Hyunmoo throws a stone up in the air, stating that she cannot do that. Hurling it towards Kursin with the help of his stick, Hyunmoo remarks that she cannot let one of her juniors, who has so much potential, die like that. While Kursin stares at the stone in confusion, it comes near and strikes his sword, freeing Seo Moon from his grasp, along with the tree behind them breaking with the strike. Watching that, Howl becomes utterly shocked, while Hyunmoo tries to cover it up, stating that his attack stat suddenly increased due to the stick, allowing him to make a hole in the tree. However, instead of receiving the appreciation that he expected, he starts getting scolded by Howl, who remarks that he cannot do anything he wants in such a dangerous situation. Telling him to stay back instead of standing out, Howl turns to Kursin again. Giving a crazy smile, Hyunmoo starts to walk ahead of her, stating that he cannot stay back, leaving her surprised. Stopping him from proceeding further, Howl asks what he means by that while he starts thinking of her as a lot more disappointing than he thought. Considering that she struggled a lot while fighting against a monster who was at such a low level, he wonders if every middle-class hunter is as weak as her. He thinks that if Howl had fought against Kursin when he was alive, she would have died in an instant. Turning to Kursin, Hyunmoo repeats his direction of avoiding killing humans. Remembering that when Kursin was running towards Howl, he had the intention of killing the hostages, Hyunmoo realizes that he is not completely under his control. He thinks that if the situation continues to be like that, Kursin might end up killing one of them. Therefore, he clears his throat and turns to Howl, explaining that if Seo Moon were to die, it would have been difficult for her to justify it. Stating that he is not trying to judge her for her decision, Hyunmoo explains that if she had lost the sight of the goblin, things might have gotten even worse. He also considers it to be a very cruel act to sacrifice one of their group members like that, causing her to feel a little embarrassed. Stating that he has done nothing during the exploration, Hyunmoo reaches for another stone, remarking that they would have left without accomplishing anything by this act of hers. Declaring that he has not come inside the dungeon to waste his time, he throws the stone up in the air once again, telling her to avoid coming in his way and hurls it towards Kurson. As soon as the stone strikes Kurson's face, it starts to bleed, and Howl suddenly intervenes, swiftly rushing towards him holding her swords. Leaping up in the air before him, she recalls that a single mistake of hers almost led to the death of a new hunter, considering that she needs to make up for it. Therefore, she decides to kill the monster herself. However, just then, Hyunmoo also starts to approach Kurson with the stick in his hand, causing Kurson to become confused. Reaching near him, Hyunmoo launches an attack with his stick that Kurson blocks, albeit feeling bewildered at the strange turn of events. After trying to block the attack with his sword for some time, Kurson starts to feel powerless in front of Hyunmoo and falls back from the impact of the stick. Standing at a safe distance from him, Kurson stares at Hyunmoo with confusion when he suddenly tells him to look at his back. Confused, Kurson quickly turns around, finding Howl about to launch a surprise attack. However, being unable to block such a close-range attack, Kurson takes it upon himself and responds by launching a kick at her face while falling to the ground himself. Reaching near him, Hyunmoo starts to hit him badly with the stick while stating that it is better to take these hits instead of getting stabbed from the back, causing him to feel frustrated. Meanwhile, Howl lands back on the ground and turns to him to start a relentless fight once again. Refusing to give up, both of them try their best to overpower each other when Kurson suddenly notices Seo Moon lying unconscious at his feet. Getting an idea, he holds Seo Moon up and throws him towards Howl, causing her to crash to the ground with Seo Moon upon her, which makes it difficult for her to get up. While she is struggling to get to her feet, Kurson reaches for her with fierce intent in his eyes. Watching that, Hyunmoo realizes that Kurson has gotten out of his control and thinks it would be better to find the time and run away. Therefore, he commands Kurson to go away, stating that he does not need to fight anymore. Hearing that, Kurson barely manages to control his anger and uses the smoke bomb once again in order to disappear from their sight. Watching that, Howl tells him to fight her instead of running away and pushes Seo Moon aside to get on her feet. Realizing that he is already gone, she starts to feel increasingly frustrated. Watching her and all the other members of their team, Hyunmoo realizes that this is how his first experience of dungeon exploration had to end. As the smoke begins to dissipate, Howl calls out to Hyunmoo, stating that she has found trails of blood that can help her track the monster and instructs him to leave the place with others. Hearing that, Hyunmoo becomes surprised while she states that she will be depending on him for that and runs away while he keeps calling out to her from behind, trying to stop her. After some time, Howl goes to the head office, asking if the dungeon has met any hidden conditions, but the agent informs her that it has not. He explains that it is a permanent type dungeon that has not shown any signs of change and that the other hunters that entered the dungeon at the same time as them have not seen any such thing. The person states that despite wanting to help her, he cannot do anything based on just the stories that she has told. Hearing that, she takes a deep breath and turns around, wondering if she should be satisfied by the fact that no one got hurt in her team. Sitting on a bench outside the office, she is still engrossed in these thoughts when someone calls out to her, and she slowly turns around, becoming startled to find Hyunmoo right next to her. While she feels surprised to see him all of a sudden, he remarks that she does not seem to be okay, causing her to ask if she has something he needs. In response, Hyunmoo states that this is not the purpose of his arrival and asks if she was able to kill the goblin, causing her expressions to change. After staying silent for a while, she takes a deep breath and takes out Kurson's cap from her pocket, stating that she did find it, making him shocked. However, she reveals that when she got there, the monster had already been dismembered by someone. She shares her belief that the other goblins might have noticed that it got hurt and attacked it while they had the chance, and she only brought the cap as a piece of evidence. Turning to him, she states that she forgot to thank him and brings her hand forward, commending him for his effort. She states that it is only because of him that they were able to save a precious life that was about to be lost because of her wrong decision. In response, Hyunmoo stays silent for a while and then asks if it would be possible for him to enter 2-star dungeons with the level of skills he has. Thinking about the powerful goblin they faced in the dungeon, she states that his skills were really impressive to her. Considering his capability, she asks if he was a hunter who took a long break, but he disagrees, prompting her to ask if he entered a 1-star dungeon because of the restrictions on the rankings. In response, Hyunmoo agrees, stating that his reason is similar to that, and takes out the return stone from his pocket. Meanwhile, Howl goes on to ask if he is associated with the specific clan, causing him to ask if she is trying to get dirt on him. In response, Howl assures him that this is not what she meant, while considering it strange for him to enter a 1-star dungeon with an overseer while he seemed to be used to working alone. Considering that the only explanation for this situation is that he is looking for a clan to join, Howl gives him her visiting card, telling him to visit her and her clan, the Great Unknown. Considering that he can become a great asset to their clan, she states that getting associated with a clan can help him register to enter difficult dungeons and get support from them. In response, Hyunmoo states that he will need to think a little in order to make a decision, causing her to explain that he would surely need help in order to clear difficult dungeons. Stating that he is completely fine on his own and can deal with things in a better way only with the help of Howl, he begins to walk away, leaving her shocked. Turning to her once again, he states that he will be expecting a positive report from her regarding the level up, and he leaves. Meanwhile, inside a building, a person runs hastily, holding a few documents and reaching the office of the research team leader. Looking at him, the team leader sitting in the office quickly turns to her computer and starts to type while feeling frustrated at him, calling again and again. However, realizing that he is not going to leave, she looks at him, asking what is so important for him to disturb her like that during work. In response, the person points to the documents in his hand, stating that they received something odd, causing her to ask what it is. Learning that the news is related to rank determination, she becomes annoyed and throws her teacup at him, telling him to never disturb her about something as trivial as rank determination. However, the person assures her that he has not come to waste her time and shows her the documents, causing her to become surprised and ask if it is really not a machine error. In response, the person explains that they thoroughly checked everything, finding it to be perfectly fine, checked for drug usage, and investigated the overseer. Explaining the different reactions she would have given after hearing about a 5-star, 6-star, and 7-star, she looks at the documents, wondering how to respond to this one. Just then, another person hastily comes to her office, stating that they have received a strange document from the Ability User Management Center and asking her to take a look. Looking at both documents displaying the picture of Hyunmoo with unbelievable ranks, she wonders how it can be possible. Meanwhile, a third person enters the office, revealing that they just received the call from the Great Unknown Clan. The person tells her that the clan demanded they release the information about Hyunmoo prior to an official statement in return for millions in cash, which intensifies their shock. After a few moments, the woman smiles, telling the person to ignore the offer, causing him to become confused at her rejecting millions. Throwing the documents of Hyunmoo at his feet, she asks if he thinks this information is worth only a few $1,000,000 and instructs them to go and investigate about Hyunmoo. She tells them to make sure everything remains confidential, causing them to ask about the official report. Stating that they will postpone it until they find Hyunmoo, she tells them to quickly move and start their work, and they all comply by hastily leaving the office. Repeating his name in her mind again and again, the woman smiles, wondering who he really is. Meanwhile, Hyunmoo, who lies down on the floor, suddenly opens his eyes, finding himself in a room, getting examined by someone. Rank is a rating system for the ability users, under which separate levels exist. Because of their exposure to mana, normal human beings awaken from being a 0-star to a 1-star, but in the case of ability users, it has never been seen to increase their rank further. After reaching level 20, which is considered the highest possible level, Hyunmoo wonders if it would be possible to increase his rank further. Just then, he gets very unexpected news from Yu-min, who examines his rank and skills by taking his blood sample. Seeing her do so, Hyunmoo asks if it would be possible to find out with just this, and she agrees, stating that this is a method used in their laboratory to find out about the rankings in detail. She happens to be a researcher who is working on the similar topic of increasing one's ranks through mana and possesses a lot of knowledge about that. Looking at his blood samples, which seem completely fine, Hyunmoo wonders if there are certain conditions for the poison blood to activate. Looking at the blood samples, she states that this much would be fine for her study and gives him documents related to rank increases. She explains that it is all about exposure to a high density of mana, stating that he should be aware of these processes, causing him to realize that it can only be done one way. 9 days prior to the beginning of the next quest, Hyunmoo enters Hell again, remarking that he needs to figure things out in this place. Therefore, he starts to walk ahead under the sky filled with thunderbolts. Looking at the time remaining at the beginning of the next quest, he thinks that this time is based on the amount of time he spends in Hell. Since the time in that place moves according to his presence, he decides to spend more time in Hell whenever possible. In order to make that time worth it, he starts practicing his skills to sharpen them and become more powerful. Using his creation skill, he synthesizes a legendary item, a short blade flowing with blood, gaining the attention of the starving star Yogalim. Similarly, he uses his skills to make cube-shaped crystal stone, which is the more refined form of crystal moss. Looking at Kursin, watching with confusion, Rainian explains that if one puts the stone near them while sleeping, it helps with blood circulation and getting rid of bad spirits. Meanwhile, Hyunmoo, who is busy creating something, calls out to Kursin, telling him to give him half of the rare equipment he has at the moment, causing him to become confused. Telling him not to worry, Hyunmoo shows him the crystal stone, assuring him that he will surely receive the reward for that. Meanwhile, Yogalim, who has been watching Hyunmoo for a long time, comes down to Hell in order to observe him closely. After spending 9 days practicing his skills and creating items, Hyunmoo stands wearing rare equipment on his arm called the Arm of Ashjet. Looking at both the legendary items he prepared these days, he walks through the place he chose for his training, remarking that despite being old, it is good enough. Deciding to start with the training, he begins to swing his blade around with full energy, causing the wall in front of him to crack. Seeing how effective his strike was, he remarks that he was worried about only having the glove for his left arm, but is already getting used to it. He remembers that he did everything he could to increase his level in the past 9 days, but realizing that he was unable to do that, he started making items in order to enhance his skills. Along with that, he studied the nearby areas of Hell with the help of Kursin. However, he still did not consider it to be enough. While he is thinking about that, he gets a notification that the new quest, called the Bottom of the Pyramid, has started. While he is contemplating the nature of the quest, the system informs him that he will have to survive the attacks for the next 24 hours. Thinking that the attackers will be chasing him for the next 24 hours, he realizes that the quest will restart every time he dies. Just then, he gets the notification that Yogalim is challenging him, informing him that accepting the challenge will increase the difficulty level as well as the rewards. Contemplating this, Hyunmoo thinks that he has been looking for a way to get stronger recently, but has been unable to find any method. Therefore, thinking of it as a great opportunity to do that, he accepts the challenge. This causes all the other stars to appear in the sky and start observing him with curiosity, making him confused about what is on their minds. With the notification that the quest is about to begin, a gigantic snake emerges before him, followed by a vast army of different creatures, with the brief that he will have to survive these attackers for the next 48 hours. Watching them, Hyunmoo becomes utterly shocked, realizing that he was not expecting the challenge to be this difficult. Just then, he hears a voice stating that he is cursed, making him confused. Following that, he experiences a strong gust of wind and looks ahead, realizing what a curse really means. Hearing the voices utter the word tasty, he wonders if they are referring to his body. Just then, he realizes something, becoming shocked and turns around to see Kursin and Rainian looking at him with their mouths watering. Shocked, Hyunmoo quickly drifts away from them, telling them to stay back and asking if they are crazy when Rainian remarks that he has become so tasty and should let them have his taste. Hearing that, Hyunmoo becomes frightened and inquires if they are aware of what kind of curse has been put on him. In response, Rainian reveals that it is like a unique spice. She explains that these are the spices that can only be tasted in Yogalim's banquet hall and agitate the hunger of everyone around the person cursed, making him smell and taste delightful. However, after tasting it, one becomes addicted to it, and in pursuit of finding that particular taste, they can do anything. Considering that she is a fairy with a promised end, Rainian states that it would be fine for her. She informs him that the army of the starving star is actually a hell full of greedy people that live to eat or to get eaten by the world. Hearing that, he turns to Kursin, who stands close to him with his mouth watering. Annoyed by it, Hyunmoo punches him so hard that it causes him to go flying backwards, stating that his intentions were not wrong. Holding his head in anxiety, Hyunmoo wonders if this curse would lead every living creature to attack him the moment they noticed his presence. Turning to Rainian, he asks about when the army of Yogalim is going to attack him when the door behind him suddenly begins to shake badly, making all three of them startled. Holding the blade in his hand, Hyunmoo stands ready for the confrontation when the door suddenly shatters into countless pieces. Following that, a huge cloud of mosquitoes enters and sticks to his body, sucking up his blood. However, under the impact of his poisonous blood, the mosquitoes start to die themselves. Realizing that they are just mosquitoes and not some deadly creatures, he starts to crush them under his feet. Feeling annoyed by their disturbance out of nowhere, Hyunmoo remarks that it is not the time for the mosquitoes to be active. Rainian informs him that mosquitoes are the least powerful creatures in the army of Yogalim and have arrived first because they are the fastest, revealing that the others will be arriving soon. Therefore, according to her, the only purpose of the arrival of the mosquitoes was to locate him and cause him to realize what was happening. After silently contemplating for a moment, he comes out of the building when the feathers of the birds suddenly start to fall upon him. Looking above, he feels shocked to find an entire army of pigeons surrounding him from all sides. Looking at the pigeons, he wonders if this is Yogalim's army and smiles, calling it an interesting preference. However, just then the pigeons start to rush towards him along with more mosquitoes, causing him to run away in a different direction. Although weak compared to him, such overwhelming numbers of birds and insects make it difficult for him to deal with all of them by himself. While running above a bridge, Hyunmoo turns to Kursin, asking if there is a space in his village. After hesitating for a while, Kursin states that the birth rate has currently increased, causing him to become annoyed, remarking that he was not expecting much. Feeling frustrated, Hyunmoo thinks that he was prepared for every kind of situation but did not expect the curse to be in the form of mosquitoes and pigeons. Getting the notification that he is being observed by Yogalim, he starts to vent his frustration, remarking that he seems to be enjoying the situation. Jumping down the bridge in frustration, he states that he wants to have someone he can fight with instead of dealing with birds and insects. Just then, he notices an entire army of monsters standing under the bridge, becoming shocked. While the monsters wait for him to come down, he jumps to the ground, causing huge clouds of dust to rise, making them confused. As the clouds begin to dissipate, Hyunmoo emerges from within with a confident expression on his face and stands up, considering them to be perfect opponents. Remarking that these creatures should have been sent in the first place, Hyunmoo rushes at them, excited to eliminate them all. As soon as he reaches one of them, he uses his blade to slash its body. However, to his shock, the monster does not get impacted by the attack and opens its mouth, consuming Hyunmoo instead, which leads to his death. We really hope that you enjoyed this manhwa. Make sure to like and subscribe for more.